Special meeting of the Groton Board of Education to order at 6 p.m. And I'll turn it over to Superintendent Austin.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start by really talking about this year. I know that I gave you a couple different attachments, and one at the very back really talks about the FY24 financial challenges that were being monitored. When Dave Fly came here in September, he really took note of things in our budget that we needed to be cautious of, like health insurance claims. We started to see spikes over the year, as you know, of those health insurance claims. And then, you know, the funding for the health insurance as well was not as much as some of those claims were coming in. We also had some property damages, and then those continued almost every month. We had some kind of a property damage, a flood, you know, new buildings, new parts of buildings, old buildings. So we were really working with the town. We knew that we had, you know, insurance costs to pay, and we knew that we had to get these things fixed right away. So we were calculating that amount, and before we got any reimbursement from the health insurance, it was amounting to $400,000 or more over the course of the year. Then the transportation cost, of course, we have a new transportation, you know, contract, and there were even things within the contract that were over, like field trips and athletics, that continued to escalate. So we were cautious about that. Utilities were up just like at home, and our buildings are serviced through electricity, gas, oil, and now solar panel, which I'm excited about. Lunch program, in the beginning, we saw an $8,500 unpaid student lunch charge, and he estimated times 10, that could escalate up to 80. But as you heard Ernie Koshmeter talk about, some of his revenue sources have been able to contribute towards this, and also the community came out, and we had several people, retired teachers actually, who came and gave $2,000 a couple times, so that really helped us. So I have to thank this community for kind of coming together, because we're hopeful that that bill will only be 20 grand instead of 80. And then there's para-union negotiations. We're still working on that throughout the year. And then the surprise, the Connecticut minimum wage increase came in for January, but we didn't know about it until the fall. So that was another unforeseen, you know, increase. And then the prior year's expenditures that we had to take care of because of a practice that we had that was asked to revert to the, you know, a split payroll that needed to be accrued. So we took care of that as well. And it did affect us even, you know, going forward. So we had to make sure that all of that was encumbered. So just taking a look at that, I want you to know that we started out with asking all the administrators and even the departments up here to look at a 50% for their site budget and to try to, you know, until we gave them any more release. And they were really wonderful. They really held tight. I said travel only through grants, and so we held back on travel and some of those extra expenditures. So this, between the site budgets, we looked at time, and I know that the tutor situation was part of the plan to try to get through the year, but that did not take place. So, but what we did do was the hours they were supposed to work, we actually had our administrators be very careful to make sure that we didn't have overtime. So we've really held on to not having the overtime. So there were many, many strategies that we used here at central office and in the schools to hold tight to this budget, because we knew that it was going to be we were going to have these challenges, and we knew early on because of the finance director and our finance department that does a really good job with eagle eyes on the budget and let us know when things we need to pay attention. So one of the first pages I gave you was the FY24 excess revenue, and it's an estimate. I think it's pretty accurate at this point. There were things like impact aid, and Medicaid up at the top, and those were for special education. And we've been working closely with the town, and the town has been really terrific about making sure that those special ed costs that came through from impact aid are coming back to the board. And so we did have a discussion about that, about special ed costs that are excess, that need to come back to the board, and that has been happening. So I'm very grateful for that. And then there's the excess cost sharing, which is pretty similar every year that comes in, and that was all, appropriated. There were some things, so that we came in under what we had expected. So I wanted to make sure in this chart that we're not only looking at the things that came over in the budget, but we're also looking at things that came under, and we're, acknowledging that, because, in these years when you've come over, we can really subtract those other things so that it doesn't have to fall on the town's shoulders. And, we can take care of that. So that total, well, it was 1.593. The special ed cost at 193,657, subtracted from that, give us a number of 1,399,824 as excess revenue, not expected revenue. That wasn't planned for in the beginning of the year. This was additional revenue that came forward in the name of education. So I'm just putting it out there as a potential opportunity. It doesn't affect taxpayers. And it's been taken in by the town, so. The other thing that came to our attention, I got an email that I shared with you from the State Department of Ed, from Irene Parisi, saying that we were eligible to ask for 2% of the ECS grant, which would be in the amount of $500,801. However, one of the things we know is that that's money that the town is counting on. That was part of what we had predicted as part of our budget. And so my recommendation is that we not do that. And I think we couldn't do it, well, if we did it, we'd have to notice everybody and vote on it by June 14th. And I just think that this year, it's really, we've heard that really it's not a good idea. And it wasn't anything anybody was counting on. And certainly, if it was something that ever was considered by the board, we'd want to do it in an advance notice, and we'd want to make sure we had it in the proposed budget as such. So,
I just want to make a comment about that. So this is not 2% in addition.
no,
This takes from the town ECS.
it does.
There's really no benefit to our opting into this. I'm not sure why the state offers it.
It's a first time for me. I've never received a letter like this before, an
I
email
think
like
there are
this.
some towns that maybe finance their boards of ed differently, and they need more startup money, so to speak, but, the way that we're appropriated is that on July 1st, we get our appropriation, and so this doesn't provide any benefit to us. Yeah.
And Ray had talked to CASBO, some of the folks at CASBO. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about
They
that.
all tried, probably a half a dozen of them chimed in and said it's political suicide, don't touch it.
Right.
Run.
Well,
Yeah, yeah. It just doesn't work for Groton, so, thank you.
how long has this been in effect?
This is our first year.
This is the first time I've ever received it.
Oh, really? Oh, so this is something new? New, okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It said we were eligible, whatever that means.
Yeah. Eligible, the town says yes, I guess. I don't know.
This is the first year you've been eligible for it.
Right. I think it's dependent on if the board says yes, is actually the
Okay.
truth. So,
We just wanted you to be aware that this was out there, but it doesn't benefit us to pursue it. And I think it sends a strange message.
any other questions on that spreadsheet, or any questions for Ray on this excess revenue sheet? And you see the negatives too, where we came in under, like in excess cost and transportation, magnet school transportation.
Susan, is minimum wage going to go up again
Yes, in January.
in January? So did we include that in this year's budget?
We did. Did we know
Next
the
year,
number
okay.
for next year, Lori?
We did include increases to account for wage increases.
Unfortunately, the state indicated they're not going to publish the number until every fall. So the budgets are already built. So this was the first year that they did some type of cost of living minimum wage increase, so we don't really have a trend yet. But I think as we get into next year, hopefully we'll start to see a trend of what they're planning each year, and we can budget, I think, a little bit tighter. But we do have some money in, yes.
This is the first year that it started.
When they passed the $15, they set out a schedule that every 11 months it would go up $1, and that was in the legislation. This is the first year that it's tied to a cost of living.
This district isn't alone getting hit with that. My prior district, the same thing happened, and we had just finished negotiations. And what happened was, I kept telling them, because some of us read the legislation, it's going to go up automatically every January 1. Our legal team didn't read that, or missed it, something happened, I'll put it that way. And lo and behold, come November, I'm raising a red flag saying, we don't have enough, it's going to automatically go up regardless, because we were in a similar boat, $15 went to $15.69.
Right.
So, we got burned as well.
Where does the minimum wage increase from this existing year? Where did it hit us? Is that some of the overruns for the substitutes, or I'm trying to figure out, like, because most people wouldn't be minimum wage in the school system.
Right. Yeah, do you want me to comment on that? So those positions would have been impacted, things like kindergarten aides, bus aides, some of those clerical positions. So we actually have, quite a few employees in the district that were at that $15 an hour rate when the change came in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dean?
I don't think this is the case. I don't think this is the case, but would we happen to have anybody that's paid, whose pay is keyed to changes in the minimum wage? In other words, they themselves do not earn the minimum wage. They earn above the minimum wage, but if the minimum wage moves, then their pay moves as well. Do we have any triggers like that in any other contracts or agreements?
So I think I understand your question. So at this point, with the changes that we've made for the upcoming year that we budgeted for, we tried to get ahead of that a little bit, where we're projecting some of our lowest wage earning positions to be around $16 an hour. So hopefully that will make up for when the next wage increase comes in. Hopefully we're a little bit ahead of some of that. So
Yeah.
we're trying to kind of advance as best we can within the budget parameters that we have.
Yeah, I suppose it comes into two parts. The first part would be not a trigger necessarily, but somebody earning minimum wage or very close to minimum wage, moving up in pay and hitting the next rung up, who then turns around and says, well, wait a minute, if that's what they're getting paid, then I need, obviously, to stay far enough away from that rung. That's one.
Right.
The other one that I was really thinking about was, say, a contractual trigger. Somebody making effectively, say, $30 an hour, but if the minimum wage goes up X percent, then they also go up X percent, even though they're nowhere near minimum wage.
Yeah, we don't have any of those contractual
Yeah.
requirements.
Like, there are some state contracts like
Yeah.
that, but I didn't know whether we had any.
No, we do not.
Okay.
Yep.
Ray, I don't know if you can answer this or not. Special education excess cost. There was talk of that being reimbursed at 91%.
Talking excess cost or education cost sharing?
No, the excess cost.
Excess cost.
And at some stage in the process, it dropped to 73.
Correct.
Do you know from your, I know you've only been here a short time, so I don't know if you know how our budget was configured last year. Was it,
I apologize,
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I do know the 945, 441,
Yep.
that came directly from the state.
Okay.
I pulled the numbers directly off there. So when the numbers were calculated for this current year budget for last year.
Right.
It was overcalculated by about almost $250,000. So, and if I'm not mistaken, that money goes directly to the town as well. The education, the ECS, as well as the excess cost share.
Well,
We budget gross, which means the town gets all the most of it.
right, well, the special education excess cost reimbursement would come to the town and then would be turned over to us if there were a surplus. Am I saying that properly, Lori?
If there's a need, they have to pay you the excess. In other words, if you were $250,000 over, short on your budget.
Right.
I keep forgetting to turn it on, sorry. But if you were short, then by law, the excess cost would come back to the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
The problem is that some districts, I think, were using the 91%
Yes.
that was in the biennial budget, and then it was cut to 73, I believe. So I just wasn't sure if we were caught up in that or not.
Most districts did not get that 80 to 90% range. Most of them did get 70 to 75% from my understanding.
Right.
I can validate that through CASBO.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
just to
that would
make
be
sure.
helpful.
Yeah.
We can put it in the board note.
Yeah.
You follow up with that, thank you. And then we haven't really been receiving the magnet school transportation. It seems to be declining, but we have done some things with transportation also to be more efficient, cost efficient, and that's designing hubs for our magnets, so we're not, and it lessens the time for the kids, and parents have to get them to a hub on different sides of town to bring them over to the bridge, whether it's a Learn school or, a New London school. For Grasso and for marine science, I think those aren't as easy to hub because they are our students going to schools in our town.
Yeah.
So, and same with Sacred Heart. But we have looked at ways to kind of, and it's really that grant is based on how many kids are riding. So hence, we did do a survey for our families, and there were quite a few parents that said they would opt out or they already drive their child, either both ways or to or from. So we're really looking at that, and we're going to follow up with that survey to see how many people are really interested in that. And instead of, depending on, our policy says that, after a mile, we have to provide transportation. So looking at some of our neighborhoods, instead of, it's very hard to get through some of the Branford Manors, so maybe to have some points in that, they do have some points in that neighborhood that kids have to go to instead of driving through the streets. And same thing with Balfour Beatty and even at Pequannock. So to kind of have fewer stops kids get on,
Yeah.
and then I think there's some efficiency there. So we're going to really work with the transportation team this summer to try to see, because as part of our plan, we have reduced a couple buses, so, for next year.
I'm going to recognize Ian.
Thank you. Just during the overview, I'm not sure if we actually touched on, I guess it's the third page of the agenda packet where it talked about drawdowns. The 6424 Excel spreadsheet where
Yes.
basically there's a line that says summary of adjustments, current estimated deficit balance of a negative 681,983.58.
Yeah, we hadn't actually gotten to that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just seeing if anybody had any other questions about the fiscal year '24 revenue estimate. And
Yeah, no, my questions have to do with the next two pages.
okay. So is everyone,
Just one quick question.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, you first.
Okay. The legal fees, do you see us spending all that 26,000, or do you see us having a savings there?
I know that, Ray, I know you had encumbered some things. I'm not sure about how we dealt with the legal fees. I know our lawyer is on vacation for 10 days, so
Well, that's,
Might be quiet.
that's good. That's a savings, yeah.
We encumbered what we knew about.
we encumbered what we knew about.
Yes, if we knew about it, we encumbered it. That's why you're seeing a little different view as to what's on here versus the previous
Yes. You want to speak to that?
What we did prior to me, after I came on board, I had my staff, or our staff actually, go through and encumber everything and anything that we're legally obligated to pay prior to June 30th. That's including payroll, that's including Medicare, any TRB, anything that's payable to this fiscal year, we encumbered. David was doing the right thing, but he was netting things against that. So he wasn't wrong. If you notice, the dollar amounts are somewhat similar. But what I did, and to be transparent, I'm showing you this is what we have to pay to the best of our knowledge. Now, are there things that pop up here and there? Yes. I mean, is this exact? No, it's a dynamic situation. You're going to see modifications throughout. In other words, for example, we may make a gain today, tomorrow we may lose that gain. And what I mean by a gain is we may short close some POs because special ed may not need all the services for a certain product. We just closed several POs today for $10,000 or $20,000. So that's good. But we also know that we picked up a couple of students that it's going to cost us for the remainder of the month because we have to bust them out. So overall, it's dynamic. It's probably about as close as we're going to get without having full actuals on everything. So,
I think Dave was also expecting the 515 from DOD supplement
Correct.
to come in time to offset some of these costs.
yes, you are correct.
So, and the last, we did reach out to Congressman Courtney, both Jay and I know Ayanti, who is his chief of staff, and she's gone back to her folks to confirm. But what we're hearing is it is coming, but it's coming in July.
Right.
We were hopeful it was coming in May, like it has in the past, but it's not coming till July, so.
All right, so Mike,
Can
I'm
I
sorry.
have a follow-up real quick? So you're saying, Ray, that this $26,000 on this sheet is not really happening?
That was a snapshot in time. I'm, right now, if I look at legal, you're in the red by 41,000.
Yeah, okay, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to recognize Mike, then Jen, then Matthew.
Thank you. Just have a couple questions on this one,
Ian.
the FYE revenue estimate. I think all these go to the town first. Is that true? That's the, and then I can see that there's one column that's the actual as of June 3rd of this year. I was wondering, do these typically, for any one of them, come in as a lump sum, or do they come in gradually through the year? I imagine the answer is different depending on what we're
Differs.
looking at.
Varies.
But for instance, impact aid, that's the biggie.
That comes in intermittently throughout the year. Yeah.
And so we kind of recently showed a surplus there, right? Like that, it seemed like that was during the actual budget sessions
Right.
in the last few months. And then educational cost share, I mean, that's basically locked in because they don't change it, unfortunately, from year to year. And you mentioned magnet school transportation, is that a state grant or,
It's a state grant,
okay,
but it's based on ridership.
right. And then, yeah, okay, and then adult education, I would imagine that's sort of an offset of costs?
Yeah, that's additional costs came in for that, and in the tune of 9,000 or.
Okay.
We try to estimate the Mike as closely as we can at budget time. Like, we've been estimating impact aid at $4,094,000 for a while. We might have upped it a little bit for next year, but we certainly didn't know that we would be receiving something to the tune of $5,909,000 or close to $6 million versus $4 million. So, that's a pretty solid additional revenue for the town.
Right.
Right.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, so Jen, Matthew, and then Ian.
The second column from the right, oh, sorry, I am still on the revenue estimate because we're still on this because the expenses haven't been discussed yet, so I'm still here. So the column second to the right, expected total revenue, I believe your total revenue number is incorrect.
We validated these things 3 times. Which number is not?
The 26,263, 563, I believe that should be closer to the 32. I think the number that's on that line is the total state revenue.
It should be,
It does
something the
look like
formula
that.
is wrong. It should be the 26,263, 563 plus the 6135.
Yep,
Yeah.
good,
Okay.
good eyesight.
Nice catch.
Yeah, nice catch.
Formulas don't always work.
No, I know, but I just want to make sure if you're sharing this with other groups.
Jen, can you give us the number again?
I don't have it, but I can do it. Are you gonna?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Ray.
Should be 32,398. Hold on here.
866.
866. And we changed that thing 3 times, and it's still.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
apologize.
No, it's fine. And if we are going to give this to an external, if we can make it all right justified, impact aid, they're left justified.
Yeah.
I modified the original, that's why.
Yeah, no.
See, it shifts.
It's just that, like, if we're going to share
We'll
it
clean it up.
with town council, I'd rather have it. Yeah, no, thank you. My question is for the SPED excess costs. For our current budget that we just got approved, did we plan for the 70%? Do you know? So,
I was just ripping the budget apart. I really don't know what
we
was
don't,
planned in the
okay,
upcoming
because
budget.
I don't want to be in this situation again
I would-
next year.
I would keep it more around the 950,000 range,
Okay,
if it's the revenue projections going, because the town is going to count on that revenue.
exactly.
I would not do the 1.2 million. I would look at the 950 range.
Yeah.
And that's what we do year to year, see what the actuals are coming in, to get it closer, fine tune it.
And they send us, somewhere around October, November, the state will publish your excess cost. That along with your education cost sharing. There's a
Okay.
report that they generate, and that's where I pulled these numbers from,
Thank you.
right from the state. So these are true numbers. This is what the town.
What we're going to get, the
Yes.
945.
Yes.
So, this is just for curiosity, for my sake. Last year, I don't know if you can go back in time, like, was the 1193 what we had originally expected, and then the state came back and said, oh, nope, it's 945? Or, I'm just trying to understand, or did we
I could
make,
try to go back
or did,
the prior fiscal year. I'm not sure what they budgeted for the
Yeah.
prior fiscal year.
I'm just trying to see for trending purposes so that we can sort of see what's going to happen potentially next year.
I'll take a look, see if I can find it.
Thanks, Ray.
So Ian,
That's it.
your comment was noted, and we're checking to see if Clint would be able to project these documents as we're discussing them, for those who are following along at home. Matthew?
Thank you. I'm looking at the FY24 financial challenges sheet under health insurance claims, and the last line states insurance reserve will be depleted. I'd like a little clarification. It's my understanding, correct or not, that reserve is of 2 levels. One is, I think it's statutory, where we need to have 25%, whatever we budgeted, we need to have an additional 25% as a mandated corridor, I think we call that, if I'm not mistaken. Jay, is that the right word? Corridor. And that we've traditionally had an additional level of reserve above that. When it says here the insurance reserve will be depleted, what does that mean in terms of those 2 corridors?
It's my understanding you fell below the quarter. I need to see the numbers themselves. Again, I'm here about 3 days a week, so trying to do about 5 days of work in 3 days, so it is a little tough. The other thing I need to do is contact your broker and validate with them what their recommendations are for your reserve. We get back into it. What do we spend, about $10 million a year on, somewhere in that range on healthcare? So our share would be about $3 million in my guesstimate.
Yeah.
And I think the last time I saw a number was about 2.5, you were at around 2.5 million below, you were below the reserve, I
Lori,
think.
did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can answer the question. When Dave had put together the schedule, it was to identify that our district reserve would be depleted, not the corridor as a whole. So I just wanted to,
Okay.
but we're going to go into the corridor, which we have. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I personally think it will be helpful as we start the committee work to look at the budget planning for next year. I don't think it's a crisis, but if you put it on your plate, that would be helpful.
If I'm not mistaken, at the last.
I'm sorry.
At the last meeting, we were going to try to make arrangements to have the healthcare provider come in, our broker, to discuss various options with you.
That'd be terrific.
Okay.
Okay. Ian? Oh, and then Adrian.
Thank you. So it just seemed like we are jumping around from page to page. So I just wanted to get some explanation, I guess. I had some questions about the overages on the spreadsheet page. Yeah, I saw professional services went over, other professional services went over, and communications went over, and transportation went over, as well as like administration and clerical. So I'm just curious in order to understand like how that occurred, what triggered the overages, and how can we prevent this from happening in the future? As far as like having an unplanned overage like that we're not able to curtail, not able to catch early to stop the overage.
Okay, so now we are going to this. Does somebody want to give us an overview of this page? But before that, did you have a quick question?
No, I was just saying if we're going to move into here, I would
Okay.
like to, be
Okay.
recognized
So are we-
eventually.
Yeah, are we done now with the revenue estimate? And, yeah,
There's some more questions on revenue.
we are jumping a bit. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry, so this is just to go back a little bit. The sped excess cost, it looks like a check was cut from the state for a total of $945,441. I would like some clarity on, I know that goes back to the town, but I thought on that, there was some talk about there being a law where that was required to be turned right over to the district, but then I think or am I confusing that with something else?
No, so special education excess cost reimbursement
Yep.
goes to the town and then comes to us. However, this year, the actual was less than the budget, so there was no excess.
If it had gone in over, if we receive funds over, like some of these other funds, it would be required that the treasurer is required by law to send in anything above what we were expecting. But this is coming in under, and I just have to say out loud that we've done a really good job taking care of our students who typically have been outplaced in the past right here in our schools. We have some magnificent programs, and our kids are able to stay home, which is their least restrictive environment. But there are times when children need a more therapeutic environment, need more care. So those students are usually outplaced. So a lot of that excess cost comes from those outplacements. And we're a military district, the largest in New England probably, and honestly, it could happen with one boat coming in or one transfer, that you have a cost that comes in with, a family that you need to take care of. So it's really a difficult thing to predict. We kind of go on what we've been doing, and there has been a trend that we've had some cost efficiencies because of the programs that we do have in district.
Do you ever send a student out to be serviced, and then in the middle of the school year, bring them back in?
Absolutely. We do that a lot, as soon as we can. Thank you for asking that question.
And on the sped excess costs, I found the number for FY '25, and it's up 2% from that 1.2 million. So for the coming year, we have it as like 1.36 million. So is that going to cause problems if we have this trend of?
No, but I think we have to
Reduce.
look very closely when we go to set the budget for the following year and look at the trends more carefully and try to get it more closely aligned. Well, and we'll see what happens this year, or the following year. How close is it going to come in to what we've predicted? And if we're off again, then we need to adjust it for, the next time we do this. Or at least we could see the trend in the beginning of the year, how that's coming.
Okay.
Jay?
I believe, just to kind of finish up on this, I believe I heard that we were supposed to get 91% or something, a lot more than.
Well, that was
Was that
the-
the talk a long time
That was
ago?
the
Am I
talk.
remembering that correctly?
I thought that was in the biennial, it was in the
It did happen.
biennial budget, but they changed
Oh.
it this year to go to 73, I
A
believe.
lot of districts were complaining. When
Right.
I went to the last CASBO meeting, there were a lot of districts complaining because they didn't get the expected excess cost.
Right.
So,
And if you remember the arrow sheet, that was also legislation about the magnet school tuition. At one point, we weren't going to have to pay it.
Right.
Right.
Fortunately, I know Dave did put some money in, and I think we just got a number of what it's actually coming out to be, something like 515,000 that we still owe. 511,
yeah, I brought a copy.
yeah,
for you.
so, yep. So we just have to cross-reference that against what we had estimated too, but I do know that we put something in there. We didn't just take a zero. We had talked about, boy, this is going to be a cost efficiency, and it still is a cost efficiency, because they are helping us with
They
this.
did reduce some districts, but we didn't get reduced. So we got lucky there.
Okay, good.
So just to go back a little bit to my question, so we're estimating that and putting it into our budget, 193, 440. How did we come up with that number? And why would we overshoot on that number for our budget?
I think what had happened is that was the number that we had predicted, but what has happened is we've had some efficiencies this year, so the number of kids who actually needed those services came in under.
All right.
So it was the fact that we were able to take care of more of our kids, and we didn't have to outplace them. So that was kind of the good news. But then it does affect the revenue that the state was predicting to have come in.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand
not the state, the town.
the reasoning, why we would make that number potentially higher than it really is. And especially because we did it for next year, so now presumably we're starting in a deficit on that number of a substantial amount of number.
It really depends
of
on the
substantial amount of
kids
money.
that move into town and the needs that we see.
Yeah, but
and that
I would
is
say that
variable.
80% of them are already here, right? That are going to be in that, or some large percentage that were
We have
here this year are
seven-
going to be here next year. I mean,
No.
certainly some are going to come and
Yeah.
go, but,
We do have about 750 join and 600 something leave every year, so kind of about 1,500 students in and out each year out of the 4,400, so about a quarter of them. So we do see some transiency.
yeah, but I'm just, so yeah, I mean, I guess you could say a quarter of the sped
Yeah.
students. All right, no, I understand.
Yeah, you're never going to get it right to the penny, especially when it comes to special ed. And so we have to use the past to try to predict the future. This,
That's what it's based on.
yeah.
I can read you the formula
But
right
that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying, actually. He's
Yeah.
saying that,
But this was set like a year ago, and so now we have this new actual, and we can use that for budgeting going forward,
Yeah.
based on the new actual.
okay.
But so we'll always be running on information that's a year and a half old.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
the
other
problem.
problem with budgeting. That's why you can't always have a soft landing.
And with the new vote coming in, we have no idea what that's going to be.
Sorry.
I can read you the exact formula. I have it here if you want. For local placements of students educated within the district, the basic contribution is equal to the prior year's NCEP times 4.5. Certain state agency placements are subject to 100% state funding. The excess cost grant is computed twice during the year, February and May. So they've just completed one, so we may see something different probably in about 2 months, 3 months.
So it
That's
is
the
a
other
formula
thing.
mathematical
2 months
calculation.
behind.
There's another
Oh,
line.
so that 1.193, there's a rule to make that number. It's not just something we came up with.
Oh, it's
All
not
right.
arbitrary, no.
Yeah, all right, that's kind
Thank
of
you,
where I was going.
Ray.
So that actual can still change, because they just did another snapshot in May.
This actual, no. This is what, this came, that 945,
Yeah,
that is actual, that's what we're getting, that's what the town is getting.
okay.
Okay, now, they do it twice. Now, in the fall, you will see a new actual that the town will receive.
Okay.
For the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay.
Dean?
For what it's worth, so our 23-24 number was 193,440. Our prior budget was 1,093,638. So we basically upped it by 9% and change from there. Our prior actual was just over 1.1 million. So, again, for what it's worth, the number that we had, even though it's generated by formula, certainly looked like it was within our prior reality. Magnet school transportation, we put down 143. I know the difference is very, very small, but because Beverly was wondering about it.
This threw me under the bus.
Special bus for that. So we had 143 budgeted the last time. How is that computed, the 143? And before that, for our actual in 21-22 was 117. So where does the 143 come from? Is that another mechanical formula, or is that a best guess?
I think that was,
That was a prior year's budget number, too.
I would say that was
Just a
prediction.
reasonable,
Was that based on the new
It
contract?
could have been the new contract, thinking
Yeah.
about magnet schools.
Because the new
It
contract went up,
increased.
how much in this year?
I haven't read all the contracts yet,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, there was a substantial,
I've
was a
got reading like
substantial-
this on my desk right
there was a
now.
substantial increase in the transportation contract that would have affected magnet school transportation.
And you can see the
So-
reimbursement is only close to $17,000 for,
I'm going to recognize Ian and then Jen.
I'm just, I am appreciating the conversation. A lot of people are asking the questions I would have asked about this page, so I was just waiting to get to the other pages.
Okay,
So
Yeah, we're working
I'll
our
wait
way.
until we get to page 3, yeah.
all right,
All right, thank you.
Jen.
Last question. Thank you for sharing that formula.
Okay.
Prior year times 4.5%, February, May. Prior year, we know how many students we service, so we can sort of guess.
Yep.
So we should be able to do, not you, but like, we as a district should be able to have a better estimate when we go into the next budget, even though the calculations in February and May.
Keep in mind, sometimes the
Again,
state,
it's a-
like you were expecting 91%.
Yep.
This year
Right.
was closer to 73%.
Yeah.
Right.
So that,
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
can,
so
we
it's
can
hard
do
to-
that calculation, and then we can take the conservative, if we know, that's why I was asking, the trend hasn't been at the 90%, we, collectively, we can make the decision, we're going to plan at 75%, and if we're over or under, at least
that's
it's
the
better.
conservative approach, I
Yes.
would agree. Yeah.
So we can sort of like, so that we don't get into trouble, like for next year's budget. We might be in trouble for 24, 25, but 25, 26, we can at least control it, what they're putting in.
but remember that that's one child off from another $100,000 placement.
Yes.
So they go like that, or more. And then there's transportation. So we do have some children at the School of the Deaf where they're riding a bus, and, there's really exorbitant cost, and we're obligated by law to meet their needs, so just know that.
And to support that, like today, we gained a little on our encumbrances because we were able to close some purchase orders. But on the same note, we were also notified we had several move in that's going to cost us some additional money because we have to outsource them,
Yeah, yeah.
outplace them. So things like that happen.
You know, I'm just trying to
happen daily.
minimize, like, I know budget is only as good as the day it's signed, right?
Right, right.
And then tomorrow is like another story, heck, an hour later, it's another story. But we can at least put some formulas into place to protect ourselves. And, you know, rather than just say like, okay, the state's telling us 90%. If we know the state in past history has not kept up with that, we can adjust the factor. That's all I'm saying.
Is there anyone else? Okay, are we ready to move on? Move on to this.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I do want to say something. At 8:30, the NBA finals are on. Let's try to wrap it up by 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Jen.
I didn't say you, Jen.
What just happened to you looking at me, Jen?
I think we should shoot for 7:30.
All right. So do we want to go to the drawdowns, or are we going to go to the?
Whichever way you guys want to start. It's fine with me.
Probably this to explain first and then solve. My recommendation. I don't.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with Jen.
Yeah, that's the way I thought it was going to go.
I'm good with that too. I'd like to, look at the drawdowns and have an explanation, and then we can bounce our questions off that.
Well, Jen had said start with the summary,
Object code, yep.
object code, and then we'll move to the drawdowns. So does anybody want to give an overview of what's going on with all these encumbrances?
The encumbrances were put back in. As I had stated earlier, David had netted many of the encumbrances to try to bring it down to show where you might be if you took the transactions and took the adjustments or the expected revenue that's coming in.
So you
What
basically, he used these drawdowns to adjust his encumbrances, and you've now taken
Right.
these drawdowns back out to give us a true picture.
Not all of these.
Not all.
And the
Okay.
515 for
That's not
DOD
part of
supplement.
this.
I know,
Okay.
but that was what he had done to draw down.
Correct.
And now we've
Those are all back in.
made that right. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That 515 is in reality, it's part of your obligation, our obligation as a board. We net about 1.2, let's say 1.25 million. Now, again, as I stated earlier, this is a dynamic number. It could grow, it could shrink. It depends on what we clear over the next 3 weeks, 3.5, 4 weeks, actually. So it shows 1.4 million. That has a direct relationship, and I've mixed up all of my sheets here, that 1.3 is directly related to this sheet, okay, where we start taking those adjustments. Okay, we start moving some of the funds that we're recognizing in terms of revenue directly sent here to the board. These revenues were sent to the board. We need to process the checks, take those credits, apply them against the expense, and then we'll debit our cash and we send it over to the town with our deposits. So that's where this shows 680,000 approximately. So that's what this is. This is the net of here, once we're done, okay? All of the salaries have been re-encumbered on here. Some of the salaries throughout the year, because of past practices, were not fully encumbered. So we went through with the staff and we re-encumbered as many of the salaries that we're obligated for, such as vacation payouts, people leaving, they get a buyout on certain programs. Anything that we're obligated for has been fully re-encumbered in here. I don't want to surprise, I mean, the board is here tonight say, hey, we're gonna need X, Y, Z dollars to finish the year. You can't fall short. So that's what I'm saying. So I wanted you to see, this is truly our expenses prior to processing any checks or crediting any of those expenses with the funds that have come in. So to the best of our knowledge, we've covered most everything as of June 30th. Now, we've just processed payroll. I couldn't run another updated file today because your obligations, your encumbrances will drop, your expenses will move over. So by Monday sometime, you may have another, we're going to internally run another file like this so that we can see exactly where we're at.
Because we have payroll this week.
Payroll is what's the biggest expense of the district. So once we run payroll, which we're finishing up today, then we have to clear the encumbrances, which is another process that they'll do tomorrow. There's additional purchase orders that they may encumber. There's also payments that they're working on that will clear some of the purchase orders and encumbrances that are over there. So by Monday sometime, I'm going to say mid to late morning, we'll have a nice clean report. We'll see where we're at again.
Can I just help answer one of Ian's questions about the over and under? So he had mentioned the substitutes are over by about 400, let me think, 400, I'm trying to look at this without my glasses on.
Yeah, 400.
442. But the teacher salaries are to the good by the 863. So you want to talk about that a little bit, Lori, about how like we had a Spanish teacher that we could never fill that position with another Spanish teacher. We did get a certified person, but they were really, I think, maybe in the subline instead of the teacher line.
Yeah, so it's not unusual where you see those lines offset each other based on how you had to staff. If you can't find a certified person, you have to staff with a substitute. If you, hard to fill certification areas, Spanish was one of them this year, social worker was another one. So you have a fair amount of their salary in the subline instead of the teacher line. And then also when we have to, if we have individuals who take maybe extended maternity leaves, they have a period of which they're out of the classroom, wouldn't be paid for a period of time, so we're supporting that classroom with a substitute. So you have to, you're correct, you have to look at those two lines together because they really kind of offset each other usually.
Which two lines are we looking at? Just kind of following, I don't see those.
Number
on the
2 and number
drawdown
4.
page.
Ian, it's number 2 is the teachers and number
Oh.
4 is the substitutes.
So all right, we just jump pages again.
No, Jen had suggested we go with the summary review first, so that we can see the overview of the encumbrances,
I
and
think
then
you
we'll
had
go
asked
to
us
the
to do
draw.
that, Ian, too.
Then we'll go to
Okay.
Yep.
the drawdowns.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, well, that explains my confusion there. All right. Appreciate that explanation, and, yeah, so those do kind of wash out a little bit. Now, I was curious, what's the professional services and other professional services, and also the overages and the clerical, and the administrative? Like, what were those attached to? What caused those, I guess?
I can share a couple comments, and the administrator, and the administration.
Want to pull the microphone
Yeah.
closer?
Thank you. With the administration, historically, they had not budgeted in the past for vacation payments, so that's in the administrator line. And then the clerical line is the vast majority of it is overtime payments. And I can answer your question, Ian, in relation to overtime. Earlier this year, we put a significant amount of overtime controls in place, and we would intend to continue to control that into next year. And same thing with like custodian maintenance, there's some overtime costs in there as well. Really from lines, let's see, most of the salary lines are overtime costs when we look at the individual groups. Security, maintenance, clerical.
But that was one of our
Moving forward
strategies.
in-
Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
I just wanted to clarify that, so if I heard you correctly, moving forward into the next year's budget, that we're going to have strict overtime controls?
Yes,
As far as,
correct.
like- Okay.
That's correct, yep.
Do we
Appreciate
already
that.
have that? I couldn't figure out a reason
Mike,
for,
Mike, bring your mic
Actually,
up.
oh, sorry.
Jen was next.
Oh, it's
Once
just not the
Ian,
overtime.
once Ian's done.
Oh.
Yep, so just
Yeah.
just a moment.
Mike, bring your microphone.
So the professional services, 15 and 16, those, what were those associated with?
Special education.
Cost, yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Special education.
Okay. So that was where that corresponds with what we looked at on the previous page, the revenue estimate, where, no, wait. All right, so
It's not necessarily
numbers-
sped excess costs. This is just for our, day-to-day needs for our children with IEPs, based on their IEP.
These are services that we provide the special needs students.
right, I understand that. I guess I was trying to, I thought there was a connection between one sheet and the other, as far as like one being kind of a summary and this being the breakout. That is not the case?
No, it is not. Next year, you may have an indirect relationship based on calculations. It depends on our year-end numbers and the calculations on the formulas that the state does. There are certain numbers and formulas that we drop into a specific spreadsheet the state supplies us, and it tells us whether or not we qualify, and there's 3 different methods to qualify for excess cost sharing.
And the transportation overages for schools, that's the bus contract?
Yep, that's it.
And we don't have a buffer built into that contract to handle, slight overages like that? Or is that overages like all fuel, or is that maintenance?
Fuel would be separate.
Okay.
That's basically the contract. And
So is that just usage, like that caused that overage? Or,
On this page.
I wouldn't, when was the contract signed?
the contract was signed way after we budgeted. So
And
it
it took
was
effect
in the
in
spring
September,
that we
October.
signed the contract, and we were budgeting for it in the fall.
Okay.
So that
So
was,
the budget was approved and the contract was signed after the.
exactly.
So
So we
you're
didn't
eating-
have all the information.
So you're eating some, you have
Right.
buried cost in your budget right now.
What are the dates on the contract? Because I thought it was December 22 was when it was, between the 6th and the 12th. And then I don't know when it was signed, but I thought it went through legal at that point.
Can we get to that in a moment, because Jen's been waiting for a long time. Are you done, Ian?
well, actually, Mike asked the question I was already thinking to follow up.
Okay.
Was when was the exact date of the bus contract signing?
It was in the spring. I can find out for you, but it
Oh,
wasn't
which
until the
year?
spring. And it wasn't
year?
legal for last spring. This is the
23.
first, this is the first full year of the contract. We're obligated to 3 full years, and then the last 2 years will be up to the board to decide. But those are probably the most cost-efficient years. But
So we
that's
just
something-
started paying, so the contract was signed in spring of '23,
Right.
but we didn't actually start paying for services until September of '23.
Actually, this summer. It would have
This
been a
summer.
July 1 contract, so when we had busing happening for summer school and that kind of thing was our
right,
starting
understood.
gate. Yep.
All right, so that, I'm not, I guess maybe, is there a copy of the contract that be forwarded around to the board?
Yeah, I think
Because,
we've shared the contract. We can share it again.
Okay, all right, I'll dig through my emails as well, but, yeah, if you could send it again, just to have it on top, Because I guess I don't understand how we could have a contract
Right.
and there's overages.
The board approves
Um,
those types of contracts.
Yeah, it was approved, yeah.
Well,
But he
well-
wasn't here when it was approved, yeah.
Yeah,
That was
but
before my time.
keep in mind, that was a bidding process. The board didn't approve the contract. It accepted the contract that was the result of a competitive bidding process by law.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand the mechanisms within the contract that would hang us out to dry for 166,000.
Well, you might want to explain, the buses and what we pay for that's not in the contract.
Right. Yeah, we can send out a document on all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to dive deeper into that to get a better handle on the mechanics of it.
Right.
We did have our board lawyer working really and scrutinizing this for us, before it really was accepted, so.
No, I appreciate all that. It's just more for my own edification at this point. It's just so I can understand it, because it's just, I don't understand how it could work where, we end up with excess costs if we have a contract for service.
So I understand that concern, and actually, one of the things that really showed up was that we were budgeting, especially for athletics, based on what was prior knowledge, and so there was increases in every area, field trips and all, not only the normal transportation, but the additional transportation, midday transportation. We were used to having 6 to 6 covered, and now every little thing that gets done during the day gets charged. So there were multiple. It was really quite, quite a different contract. But it was the
Right,
best
so-
out of the bids. So,
Understood. So there was like a sort of something got lost in translation as far as like when we shifted to the new contract, we didn't necessarily adjust our expectations for
well,
usage.
we didn't know about them. So when we were budgeting for it in the fall and into the winter, we didn't have this information on the new contract yet, all the specifics.
And this was the best contract.
This was the best one.
There were
There were only
two,
two.
there were two
We
bids.
had 2
Yeah, there were
bids.
only
There were
two.
2 bids,
Yeah.
yeah.
It wasn't
I'm
like.
sorry, but did you just say that the contract was signed prior to knowing all the specifics?
No, the
No,
budget was
the
created
budget was
before we had a contract, and so this was the best
Oh.
estimate of what the contract would be based on the competitive bidding process.
Understood. Okay, sorry. All right, and I guess my last, communications, the overage in communications, what was that associated with?
What line are you on?
31?
No, sorry, line 31,
31.
158,321.
Was that the telephone?
Yeah, that's technology, yeah.
Yeah, was that a shift from the DOD supplemental to the operating budget?
Or was that the phones that Clint had talked about?
Yeah, the phones were paid out of DOD supplemental
Yeah,
previously, and then they were shifted to the operating budget,
I think that was the new phone lines.
as I remember the explanation.
But we can find for sure.
We can ask Clint for,
Yeah.
I think Clint did address that
Yeah,
during the budget process.
yeah.
Okay, so I remember that conversation.
Yeah, I
remember
do too.
The phone shift. Moving forward, are we going to be able to kind of hold our line items to one, from one year to another? Because I think that causes a lot of confusion when we do lump sum shifts of classification.
Yeah, this had to do with going from grants to operating budget, so that grant will go away, so there'll be no more shifts.
There.
Okay, so
Yeah, that shift-
phones,
that-
I think there's certain
that will s-
essential
yeah, that'll s-
functions like that could definitely be always operating.
Yeah, it was just because DOD supplemental was our technology fund for many, many years, but now that's gone away, so it'll remain in the operating budget.
Understood, appreciate that. And, okay, this is my real last one. Electricity and heating. There is an overage of 437,695, line 37.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question that we are under contracts, but I know each building is under its own contract, and so were there expirations of contracts and
Again, I'd have to-
renewals?
Contracts,
Yeah.
I'm trying to search contracts now, I'm not having much luck, but that's another story.
Right.
The electricity.
Well, back at the time, when we
I
were
am gonna-
making
I
these
haven't forgotten you, Jen, I
predictions of
promise.
challenges, if you look at utilities, we were already, at that time, in the fall, 54% of the electric bill was already spent. So, and natural gas, actually, those budgets were down a little bit, the natural gas and the oil.
If I recall, Dave spoke a lot about the inflationary costs with those line items throughout the year.
Especially electric.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been on the news quite a bit. I think everyone's electric
Yeah,
bill is
no,
out
I
of sight. So,
And most of us, unless you had a 5-year agreement like I
Right.
had with my last district,
right,
your electric cost over the last several years was jumping anywhere from, let's say, 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour to 23 to 25 cents a kilowatt hour. And then look at your delivery fees. Those have also jumped equal, if not more. So all of us have been paying much more for electricity than in the past, particularly the last 3 years.
yeah, yeah.
So I would suggest, once you're done with your solar, that we look at something like, we joined CCM out of Hartford, and the consortium that we joined went out to bid for the town and the board, and we locked in with MP2 at a rate of 7.53 cents a kilowatt hour for 5 years.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
just.
Wonder if you can
suggest-
get that deal these
Something,
days.
is that something that we could do?
We still do
We
it.
we definitely need to look into that through
Can I
CCM.
just ask you a question real quick, one follow-up to that
Okay,
point?
and then we're gonna, I promise that we're gonna go to Jen. I promise, Jen, I haven't forgotten you.
Yes, so I just, like, that idea that Ray just brought up sounds great, but would we be hindered by the fact that we have 2 utility companies that serve us?
I don't believe so.
We
You have
have-
a right, you have a right to buy your electricity anywhere. No, I double.
Just
All
like
right,
at
so
home.
For half the-
Groton Utilities being one thing and then Eversource being another, that's not gonna cause a complication with that idea?
I don't think so, but I mean, you'd have to go out to
worth finding
RFP
out.
with CCM or piggyback on them, but I'll double check with the Sprague, but with Eversource, I
Yeah.
know it's not an issue.
Yeah, well, even if we
Well, you
switch
know,
over the Eversource account, the schools that are on Eversource, even if we get those over, yeah, nobody's gonna touch Groton Utilities. I don't think.
Yeah.
And your diligence.
Thank you, Ian. Jen?
Thank you. So Ray, like, I was like the one who was sort of pushing for management reserve, so thank you for the encumbrances column here. Much appreciated. My only question is, right, before I actually go into the question, expenditure actuals is as of what month?
That was as of last Thursday, I believe.
So that's May actuals?
No, not Thursday, Monday. I ran the report Monday, so it's as of
Monday.
this Monday.
Oh, this Monday, so June.
So, end of
June
month, okay, but end of month, technically end of month May, right?
Correct, yep.
So the question now begs to differ is like, for the teachers, the encumbered number is like 9 million, which actually, if you look at the entire total salaries line, if it's May and our end of year is
Oh,
June,
This comes up every year,
and now it's like 20%
right?
of the salaries is being encumbered, like, I'm just trying to understand, because we don't have,
Got buyouts in there. Summer buyout.
Lori, I think, has the
Go ahead,
answer.
Lori.
Yeah, Lori can,
I just
This
want
comes up
to,
every
the
year.
encumbrances include our, correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, our summer payments to teachers. So that's why it looks significantly more, but we have to encumber for their wages through August 31st.
through August.
Yeah.
And how many teachers approximately is
About
that
450.
for summer school?
Oh,
no.
no, this
That's
is
their-
contractual
This is all
wages for the
teachers.
teachers, all teachers.
Their
So my-
salaries,
Yes.
yes.
Oh.
got
Pay
it.
them,
Yes.
instead of 10
Yep.
months, we pay them
Pay
for
them,
12.
got it.
they can
That
opt
range-
either, they can opt either way, right, Lori? Or no? Not in Groton? They can't, okay.
Okay.
One of the districts that does not do balloon checks. So
Yep.
It pays a 12-month salary.
Okay, so that makes sense. Thank you for that. Same question for the school buses. Are we behind in arrears of payments? Because like having a 1.3 million and we only have if this is as of end of month May, let's just say we'll have May and June payments, or does this take in, also into account, like, summer school transportation? Do we do that? Like, what's included in that 1.3 million?
1.3 is an estimate of the number of buses that are going to be used based on contract, morning, evening, the buses possibly being used for athletics, special
Sure.
ed needs. I mean, every bus that we have out there, that's the best guess from the business office as to how much more we're going to spend. So that's why those numbers are encumbered based on purchase orders.
Yeah, and could this be reflecting that we haven't received the invoice from STA? You've done a purchase order, but you haven't received,
That could be part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That could be part
because
of it.
sometimes
Those
those,
are kind of slow coming in. I think you might remember Dave saying that they had to accurately report before he paid, and they really did do that finally, so.
Okay. So no, that's good. I'm just trying to understand all the encumbrances. Granted,
No.
I want it to be there. I do not want it to get caught, but I just want to understand, like, what we have set aside
Now, I
funds
do want
for.
to, put one little caveat, to the best of my knowledge. When I ran this report, I asked my staff, make sure, are we done processing everything? We were processing right up until about 11:30 Monday. But there could have been one hung out there that I wasn't aware of. So
No.
it still may clear and reduce the encumbrance and add to it.
Yep.
That's the only bad thing about trying to run things too quickly with an operating system.
Exactly.
I've seen it double up my liability.
So-
But I'm not anticipating a lot of that here.
Okay, so this is one of the things that we had asked for, like, during either the budget season, and so you weren't here and you're not privy to some of our conversations. This is why I was asking what time period is. So if we have an end-of-month reporting, we hold static to end of month. Let's not do like, oh yeah, end of month plus like 1 week, right? Because that's just not good reporting, right? Like trying to get like, oh, you're saying like June. So if we do end-of-month reporting, we'll do end-of-month reporting. And then I asked for like a management reserve account so that like we know everything that we have obligated ourselves and we can best predict. So we have, this is what we set aside for management reserve and this is what we're paying out. And that needs to be consistent. I asked Dave that and he said he did it. I'm not sure if he did, maybe he did, but it's just so that we're not guessing, because you've said multiple times, I don't know what's supposed to be coming in, but we should know. If we ask for bus services, bus route, we sort of know, like, yep, we should be getting a bill from STA for X amount, and we could set that aside, and then we draw down upon that. So and I am not looking at your operationals, what's going on in operations, but I think we really need to have that so that here's end-of-month reporting, here's our open commitments, basically. I call it management reserve, sometimes open commitments, and then what we can pay. So I know you're doing like the best you can, trying to put it together, but I think going forward next year, we need that. Also, in a prior meeting, we asked that we get reporting more consistently, and let's put fundamentals in place so that this board and future boards do not get caught, like, not knowing what's in here. And I know you're helping out, and I know you're bringing all the things in, but those are some of the things that is core fundamental that we need to have, because it's scary, us sitting here as a board, we're all volunteers and not really understanding or knowing, until like, oh yeah, this is for this, this is for this. But we need to know this every single month so that at this time, we are all comfortable with what's in here and there are no, oh, what's in here, what's in here. And so we all know and we're like privy to it as the months go by.
Let me give you a little background. First of all, I definitely know where you're coming from.
Okay.
I sat in Jay's chair for 12 years.
Thank you.
So I'm a former board chair as well, so I definitely understand where you're coming from and what your needs are. Second, I do want to reiterate The encumbered number is your reserve that you're talking about.
Yep.
Okay, so if you look at that encumbered number, that is your reserve, that's your liability
Right.
moving forward.
Yes.
Okay, that automatically gets deducted once it's paid and we process the process managers within the operating system. So that will reflect your net bottom line. So that's why, over the past week and a half, my staff was probably not happy with me, but we were encumbering like crazy to get things where they should have been.
Yes.
Okay,
So like I said, I thank you for that, but that rigor should have been in place. And so I thank you for putting that.
I think, and in defense of David, I think he was looking at giving you a net number, bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm more concerned with showing you what your true liabilities are.
And I thank you for that. Sorry, Dean, go ahead.
No, I just raised my hand just now.
Okay.
Well, actually, we're going to go to Mike and then Dean.
Okay, thank you.
And then-
So looking through all these lines, a lot of them have been discussed at this point, but when I go to that last column, that percent increase or decrease, or like percent overestimate or underestimate column, when I see something large, regardless of the value, it's either, in my thinking, something unanticipated or perhaps optimistic budgeting or the other way as well. And so I was just going to kind of go in order, but not ask about everyone. I wanted to come back to number 5, clerical. I think you mentioned that it was due to overtime, but that's 14% of the budget. So what situation caused that much overtime in clerical?
So I can't speak to every individual event. I can tell you that there's a significant amount of overtime across various clerical staff, so school secretaries, central office staff. I think this is a compilation over a period of time before we put those overtime controls in place. And I think we started those overtime controls partway through the year. So there's just a significant amount of work
And I would say.
and workload, yeah.
If I remember during the budget process, it was a maintenance person who was like half-time, if I remember correctly.
This is
Somebody
clerical,
in the-
though.
No, it's clerical and custodial.
It's just clerical, number 5.
Oh, 5, okay.
Yeah.
But during the budget process, there was a lot of work being done related to the budget and some questions that were asked that I had actually given Jay some numbers of overtime that was going on, and they had to get their daily work done. So that's just for instance. That's just a snapshot of one example. And I'm sure there are many others, but as soon as we saw those overtimes coming in, we actually we gave all the information to the administration about what the actual timeframes were and what they needed to be really paying attention to. And we gave the staff the information that any overtime had to be authorized by administration, or it wouldn't happen.
So does that, with these new controls, so when I see a lot of overtime, I think of, for instance, the public safety budget, the police department, usually it's because they're understaffed compared to what the need is. Was that the situation, or was this excessive overtime? Basically, what work's not being done, I guess. Are we understaffed in clerical? And now that these overtime controls, it's what work's not being done, and is that critical?
I would say yes, and also the influence of some of the jobs required and the expectations, especially if there are additional expectations that go beyond what their workflow is normally, that does cause some overtime.
Sorry, I asked a double-barrel question there. So my first question was, are we understaffed in clerical?
I would say in some areas we are. We're running very large schools with a secretary, and sometimes the principal ends up, having to help out. And even in our biggest schools, in elementary, there's just 2 secretaries. And so I would say that, yeah, we do have what we call a community coordinator that help us with mentors, but they also help fill in so the secretary can have lunch and they're there. But on limited time and through ARP-ESSER, we were able to add some, but then that ARP-ESSER funding did go away. So you're probably right, Mike, that has been an area where we've done with, pretty trim staff. And
Is that similar for number 7, campus security and supervision? Or is that overtime, or is that additional personnel?
So it's not additional personnel, it's definitely additional hours for them to support the schools through the course of the day. They originally budgeted at about 25 hours, and the schools, in general, with all of the SEL needs for the students, in order to, manage disruption and things like that, they've needed them more hours and more time.
And I would say also, some come in early to help us with the traffic flow. You know that a lot of our kids do get driven to school, so we have to be super careful. We had an accident at Groton Middle a couple years ago, and so we went through a whole OSHA requirement on what we needed, and so our needs kind of increased so that we had supervision before school and after school as we're getting kids in and out. So some of that may also impact security.
Thank you. And then, I think it's already been explained, skipping down to purchase services, instructional services, professional service, other professional services, those are big, but those were explained. I think legal was touched on, but I didn't hear the reason why it's so much higher than anticipated. And I guess, is that going to continue this coming year too? And you may have answered that. But
Well, I would say a lot of the legal is related to special education, so depending on, what's happening, and what family expectations are versus school expectations, sometimes that's where you'll see some of the legal. But then there are other, for instances, that have happened where it's required. We had a change of practice with our robotics team, and so there have been some things that have just been kind of resolved with past mentors that were kind of in charge of the team, and then the school district really took it back and took on some information, took on some, support. Supporting.
that's under legal for
Well,
robotics?
Well, there was a legal matter that we were taking care of, yep.
For robotics, okay.
Susan, can you, for legal, can you break it up, like special ed legal and other?
Yeah, we can, yep.
We could set up a new object code and steer it directly to either your department or special ed. It's possible.
Yep.
I did that in my last.
That wouldn't cause a problem. I don't want people to look at the special ed legal and say, oh, look how much they're spending on. So if that's going to cause any problem.
Well, we can showcase the board what the differences are.
Just an FYI, when it comes to legal, it's hard to set a number because, again, it's a projection as to what you might spend. Some years, you may spend $50,000, $60,000. Other years, when you have heavy contracts, as well as some other issues like Susan was talking about, you may spend double or triple. I mean, my last district, we were spending 6 figures on legal.
And that is true. We had the para negotiations
Right, I was
going on
gonna
for a
say.
very long time. Thank you for bringing
Yes.
that up.
Yeah,
was
that
really-
did fall into
that
this
probably did
fiscal year.
impact it, yep.
All right, thank you. And I was just going through the list. I think a lot of the others have been described, so I'm kind of down to the end. I think 40 and 41 might well be related. It's a facility/maintenance supplies and other supplies. I don't know if that's a shift because one went up and the other one went down, compared to what was anticipated. So one's 23.2%, in the hole, and one's 22.5 up. I don't know. Actually, maybe it's not a shift, but the 40 and 41 is what I'm asking about.
That could also be related to
the-
property
The
damages.
property damages, yeah.
That might be 40.
40, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely 40.
And then 43 instructional equipment, it's showing a positive. That's probably because of that site budget freeze. And then 44 is that 36% in the hole. And I didn't have as much of a feel on what that is. Non-instructional equipment. Maybe that's, some of these issues too.
Well, and you see, the first line is instructional supplies. That's where you definitely see where we've held back on the supplies.
Yeah, 43, and then 44, I was wondering about it, and that's my last one for this.
I think that's us.
I'd have to research that. It's a $3,000 overage, so I'd have to research it.
Yeah.
Is that the board budget? I can't remember. I don't have my budget book in front of me.
I'm sorry, what did you ask?
Is that the board budget line? I don't have my budget book in front of me.
Non-instructional equipment,
No?
I doubt that it would be a
Okay.
board. I don't think, unless
Looks like
we
you say
supply them
800.
laptops. No.
No.
Some boards do, that's why.
Well, I think if people needed a laptop, yeah, we definitely would supply it. That has happened in the past.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
But I'll dig into it, I can find out what it is.
Any other questions on the summary?
I
Adrian?
just have a question. This is just relating back to the line 5 clerical. You'd said community coordinator, that position was paid with ARP ESSER. That funding expires the end of this month, correct? Or did it already?
Yeah, we have to close it out. We're closing it out now.
We're closing it this month. Technically, it expires September 30th, I believe, but we're closing it now because it's all expended.
Yeah, so is that position coming over, just because you said it as part of the overages and clerical, is that position coming over to a board position?
It's historically been funded through one of the title grants. The ARP ESSER was an increase in hours
Yes.
to help the schools.
So is it going back to,
It'll continue in title, in the title grants.
as far as hours though, is that going back to what it previously was?
The original
Yes,
numbers, yes.
yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Dean?
Jen had mentioned, getting regular information. And we do. We get an object code summary for every one of the regular board meetings. And one of the first numbers I look at is, go to the back, are we over or under projected? And I don't remember, maybe somebody remembers differently, I don't remember seeing this coming. I could see we were worried months ago about some sort of underage, but nothing in this range. I'm curious, I see, so we've got in parentheses 1.2 million and change, and that's as of June 3rd. In the middle of last month, it was a completely different number. We were staring at something over $500,000. And I understand that that's actually from mid-April, and things change. But I walked into this meeting mystified in a bad way about how we got from, well, we're going to have to grapple with a $583,000 underage to something that's $700,000 bigger.
So that was using that 515 that we were expecting to come in May. There's half of it, and then we do have this sheet that we're working on that
So
I know
these-
you and Jay met with me.
Yeah,
Right.
these drawdowns were
Yeah.
basically put back in to get a true picture of where our
Right.
expenses are.
And I think that's part of everyone's problem, which is we're being given information, but, there's a train coming down the tracks, and we probably should just get off all the tracks, but I don't know which track I should get off of, Yeah, that's it's not a question, it's more of a comment, which is, holy smokes,
So I think we should go back, though, to that other chart, because it'll show you some of the areas that we had intended to do and will be doing.
I understand how all this ties together. It's just that I would like to see, and maybe we'll finally get there one day, sort of consistent, like I said, going back to the train analogy, it's like the train's coming and then it backs up a little bit, and then it's coming even faster. It's like, is the train coming or not? I just want to see the train coming. I want to be able to rely on,
I think we should be consistent in whether we are, as Ray said, netting out
yeah.
Okay.
these drawdowns or not, and I would rather see this going forward as our practice, so that we know exactly where we are, and then we can.
And then we have another
consider-
sheet that shows that.
Get that this is an odd year.
Right.
So I accept that, but that's, hence I'm flummoxed.
Right. So I'm going to recognize Ian and then Jen.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, actually Dean stole my comments, so I just wanted to say I appreciate his observations there, and I share the same concern and interest moving forward. And to you, Jay, yeah, definitely, like, this sort of breakout as being a regular monthly report with projections towards positive or negative outcomes per object code is a much clearer way to see where we're at, and having as much encumbered as possible, so that we kind of get a real-time snapshot throughout the year, with every monthly meeting, so we can try to accommodate and adjust on the fly as needed. Thank you.
And I want to thank Ray for introducing, a very realistic summary. Jen?
So I missed this the first time around. If you can, row 17 or line item 17, overtime, part-time services. 600
OTPT.
Yeah, 677 encumbered, and we've only spent 75. So what are we expecting?
Does that have to do with the billing cycle of
Billing
the
for-
professional firms
I'm
we
gonna
use?
say special needs programs. where they're-
Occupational therapy and physical
Oh,
therapy.
okay.
Yes. They normally bill us once or twice a year for most of these organizations. So you will see probably by the end of June or the first part of July, you see a big drop, a big movement over from the encumbrance to the actual expenditure.
Our OTPTs come from Learn, so we don't hire them, so that's why we get charged a couple times a year, kind of like what we do with the magnet schools.
Okay.
You will see a change coming up. That's one of the areas where we had some movement
Right.
today, as a matter of fact.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then just clean up again in case it's going outside of the board. Numbers, please, right justified.
Which one?
It just drives me nuts, I'm sorry. It's like a OCD thing.
All the numbers.
All the numbers,
They're left justified.
they're
not right
left justified.
Right
I'm-
or center?
No, right, most
See, I like them center, but I'll give them right.
no.
I'll give you right.
Right.
centered only if it's a PowerPoint presentation, but when it's financials, please, right.
We'll shift them right.
Thank
It's
you.
not- That's not a big issue.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm just saying, if it goes out, please.
Okay.
Actually, this whole form, it's a massive formula that I have to drop numbers into.
I know.
I'm going to do it on an experiment first, then I'll. if I
Yes.
shift
We don't
it
want to
up-
mess up the numbers.
Yes. Because this is a formula that's been carried on for years, and I don't want
Yes.
to break it.
Harder to see from line to line.
I hear you, Ray. Okay.
I did want to say one thing. When you're coming, I know what your expectations are. Be cautious of your expectations in your first full reading of the fiscal year '25. You will see very little encumbered, and it will gradually fill in. And you're going to see late September, early October before you see a true expenditure by object report. Only because you have to write the POs, you have to get them entered, you have to physically encumber all the salaries that are in there with all the payrolls that are happening.
It takes time.
So I just want to caveat that. We know what you're looking for, but before you can call it a Bible, it needs some work.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you. So, like I said, thank you for this. And there are like other reports that we sort of wanted to, and then, I don't know if we just look at the prior board meetings, because, or I can pull it back from my notes, like some of the other things, like, we also wanted, I don't recall, but there were like 3 or 4 reports in addition to this that we requested, and now that you're there, maybe you can help us get them, so.
And I think that'll be part of your ad hoc discussion too, I think. So just to be clear, when we say encumbrance, this is not, we think we're going to spend 83,000. There's a purchase order out there, or there's a
Or there's a salary.
salary that we know about, and as these come in, the encumbrances are reduced, and then if any don't come in, it flows back
Correct.
in December.
So basically, for example, today, we had a PO, the program was canceled for a student. We closed out the PO, we actually netted, reduced the encumbrance by, I think it was $5,000 or $10,000. An hour later, we got an obligation to add something back in again. So it's things like that. That's why I say this is dynamic, and it's going to remain dynamic until the end of the fiscal year.
We might need a sports bus that's going to take a team to a game, and someone's going to have to do a PO,
Yes.
and then they're going to have to put the information on that and then encumber it.
That's right.
And that could be happening on a daily basis as
Oh, it is.
teams,
Most
Play their
expenses
games.
right now are being held to a minimum. I mean, we know the condition we're in. If it's not for the betterment of the student, we're not spending the money. I mean, Susan and Lori will both attest to that. We're just not approving, or we'll reject it and send it back. So,
Unless it's absolutely needed.
yes.
all right. Are we ready to move on to the drawdowns?
I just had one quick question, because in the answer to why it got, to Dean's question, why it got so much larger balloon from a month or so ago, one of the answers was we were expecting the DOD supplemental to come in May, and now it's for July. So does that come in directly to the school? I
Just
think?
as supplemental,
Just a supplemental. And then what can that be spent on? Anything?
anything.
Thank you.
So it was going to help us with utility costs and some of those overages that you saw.
Got it. Thank you.
We've got to be careful. It's state-driven as well. That's why I'm looking for guidance from our auditors. They put parameters around when and how I can do certain transactions. This is my understanding. I just need clarification on it.
On the DOD side or on the state side for the transfers?
Just about anything. In other words, we may have incurred the expense now, but if the check is dated July for July expenses, I can't backdate it and take that credit in. I need to see it first. Okay, so just be cautious. I mean,
Okay.
If we get it and I can offset it, fine. But if everything meets certain parameters, I just need to make sure of that. I go to jail for nobody.
I think the DOD comes with a email remittance, and I think, doesn't it reflect
Most of
fiscal
those
year?
today come with it as an ACH transaction. And then we know it comes, and most of that would go, I'm going to say, to the general fund, and then we steer it with the type of accounting structures we have. Again, it depends on, I need to see the ACH transaction.
Okay.
And there's no grant, DOD supplemental grant reporting obligation, I would think, back to the federal government. That money comes in.
With all the other DODIA,
Yeah.
there is reporting.
Of course.
But for these, and I don't think there is for impact aid either. I mean, the town uses the impact aid to support kids, but they don't have to say what it was spent on. They say it's for the education budget, kind of, so the same thing with that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So do we want to move down to the drawdown estimate?
Sure.
Sure.
So you see that 1.2 number at the top that took us all by surprise, Dean, because we did have different information the month before, but now I think we have a more realistic picture. So thank you, Ray. So there were things that we worked on as a team, like applying this $13,000 of homeless grant towards the curtain bill, which was transporting our kids who were sometimes over the bridge in hotels or other places temporarily. So it directly related to the homeless grant. So we were able to offset some curtain. We also moved Chromebooks to revenue account So we were able to offset 11,000 of that. We applied the 34,000 that we received for the truck and plow. Remember the accident that we had? That was part of more property damages that we faced after a snowfall, and it wasn't a very big snowfall. So we just took that in. Sam said he didn't need the truck and plow right away, and so we just took it in, and then we'll have to deal with that next year. SPED transition grant to pay for 15,000 of SHARP training. SHARP training is kind of like a work-study program where kids actually get to do work, and it's part of their IEP. So that was used or taken into account. And then we had some insurance property or some insurance claims. Was this, do you know anything about this one? Lori?
Yeah, that was
The Fitch High
partial
School, was that the
reimbursement.
flood?
It was partial reimbursement, yep, on those insurance claims.
Okay, and then the other one was the Mystic River with the bottle flood, the bottle filler. So we did receive those back, and are there still outstanding claims that could come back too, do we know? Do we have any idea of the insurance, how it's coming in?
I don't know, I haven't been involved in that level of
Right.
detail.
I know Clint has been really careful monitoring the cybersecurity one, and I think he tweaked that a little bit, knowing what we know now. I think that's pretty close to closing. And then when you go down to the CREC grant that offset salary account at 89,000, that was an adjustment made. And then-
39.
39.
Yep.
If you're looking at
Oh,
the
yeah,
total-
I'm sorry, I'm looking down further. Okay, that's the total summary.
So,
Thank you.
so what is the CREC grant offset?
It's offsetting salary costs for teacher in residence program.
Okay.
And then we have additional entries that need to be completed, and Ray, you want to just share with us what those are and when those are to be done?
Most of these will be completed Monday and Tuesday. This being a payroll week, we're not really concentrating on making the adjustments. We have to process the payroll. But overall, most of these adjustments are going to be made by, I'm going to say no later than Tuesday. I've asked the staff to make sure that they complete these by Monday afternoon, so that we have a better picture of where we stand.
And these first two actually came to the town first.
Right.
Right? And then they passed them on.
They did. They're related
So
to
this is a
special ed.
type of
Children's
impact aid that it goes to the town, but then they pass it on to us, similar to special education excess cost reimbursement.
Right.
Which ones are we on right now?
This is the additional entries.
The
So that next
90,000 and
group
the
of them?
75.
Okay.
Yep.
So those were town, and then it came through to us already?
As you can see, matter of fact, I even have a couple of, probably should have done that, but Kate's going to book the next, the 75,000 impact aid. We've received that. DOD supplemental for busing, we're going to take that one this week, Monday. E-rate, that may be one of the only ones we may not take. I haven't seen that come in yet. So-
I think that's shared between the town and us.
Is it?
The E-rate is a shared.
Let me check.
So is this
I
our
don't know if that's
share,
our
or-
share.
There you go. You might
Oh,
Just tell me.
yeah.
That's something we need to double check on.
Yeah, we'll get in touch with E-rate on that then, find out where it
The
is.
town might also know.
Yeah. I'll ping John.
Okay. And then the Medicaid is something that I think has come in, but it came into us, so we're holding out to talk to the town about being able to keep that.
Right, that's it's actually 102,000 that came in, not 97. So that'll help us out a little bit there. And then we have 84.9 on the children with disabilities. So, and I believe that came in, we just have to do the transaction on that
Okay.
as well. So total adjustments to be made are a little better than $560,000. That'll net you to about 680, I'm going to call it 682. So you're in the red we are in the red by 682. So that, right now, that's the closest I can come with some confidence. I mean,
We do have the possibility of requesting from the town for that OPEB savings. Can you speak to that? I know that we have a contribution that we pay for OPEB, and then there's additional contribution in the neighborhood of 111,000.
Yeah, so I believe the contributions have already been made, but it's the difference between the actual claim payments versus the ADEC.
Which
The
is-
actuarially determined contribution.
And that's kind of like the reserve of OPEB?
It adds in it takes the claims and adds in an amount to start to put towards your reserve.
Okay.
Or build your reserve, right. So the value of that, my understanding is what's on this sheet, 111,932, I believe is the difference. But I believe that contribution, we can double check it, Ray, but I believe that payment's already been made.
okay. As of the other day,
It hadn't?
it has.
Okay,
I'll
all right, so
double
you would
check it.
know, yeah, thank you for
Let me
checking
check
that.
with them. Because this netted everything that was done as of Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay.
Given that we already reduced the contribution to OPEB for next year, I just don't know that I would take this at this time.
Right. Yeah, and it's not included in Ray's numbers
It's not
either.
in the number.
That's why it's a footnote at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Along with the
I'm just saying
515, which
that
isn't
I'm not
here either.
in favor of
The
using.
only thing we put in here right now is what we're confident in. Okay.
And this does not take into account the 515,000 DOD supplemental that we're
Correct.
expecting.
So if I can make that transaction and be proper about it, that reduces that to about, what, say 170,000 approximately? Okay.
But it's
That's more
our
like the
understanding
number
right
we were
now,
first talking about.
Right.
but it's our understanding right now, it's not coming till July.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not hearing this coming
Yeah.
before July.
Mike?
So thank you for putting this together. So that red number is 682,000 essentially, that were in the red. One of the first things we show, I know this is older, but it's the one with the bubbles. The last is FY '24 financial challenges being monitored. The last part of that is prior year expenses, and it says around 626,000 of prior year expenses deferred to FY '24. It's not something I really had on my radar screen, but I was wondering, is that an option? I don't know.
No, that
What
was,
does that mean?
that was reversed. That was past practice.
Yeah,
The auditors have indicated to us that they don't want to see that being done. And I think probably the town and the board should be on the same way of
Accounting
counting.
principles that were
Yeah,
processed.
whether they're going to use accruals or not. And so I think we're now both on the same page.
of not being able to, like,
Right.
or, I was just wondering, because if, what we're talking about maybe is a month into, from, the end of June to July, when the DOD supplemental comes in.
Right.
If that's not a tool that we can
We
use.
can't use that.
I would say based on what
The-
I heard in the meeting with the auditors, that would not be something that is, it was past practice, but is not something that they are comfortable with going forward.
And that's auditors meeting with them this year, or
Yes,
like recently, or,
yes.
okay.
February.
So it was a change of practice, so it does shift us a little bit into what used to
You moved
happen.
Many-
626,000 into this fiscal year, and it wasn't budgeted.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
So, and I'm new on the board, of course. That came through, that new practice came through to the board, because I must admit, in the budget cycle, I was concerned that information from other sources were just coming out all of a sudden, but I assume this was brought to the board beforehand, right? That we can't do the same practice.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Oh,
as soon as we heard from the auditors, emails went out and the recharacterization was carried out
Okay, thank you.
by Dave.
If you also notice, another effect on this year's budget was a $750,000 reduction in your healthcare expenditures, too. on your budget. So that has a direct effect because you're either going to tap your reserve or you're going to get the money elsewhere within the budget to cover some of that.
Yep. Ian?
Thank you. So I see the for consideration section down at the bottom of this page. And my understanding that 682,000 number, I see in the last line, it says this is estimated to be 515,000 for the DOD supplemental. So that 682,000, does that account for, is that optimistic that we had the DOD coming in time?
It
Or is
won't
that
It won't be,
optimistic?
yeah.
No.
We were optimistic at the time.
So there's actually, so our actual, in the red number is that 682 plus 515?
No,
No,
no.
no. 682.
682, so 682 accounts for the fact that the 515 that did not come through.
Absolutely.
Correct.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So that's the real hard number.
Yep.
Appreciate that, thank you.
We were hopeful to get it in, Ian, and take off some of this.
Yeah.
But we're
At the
not
end of the
getting
day-
the sense it's going to happen.
Yeah, if we have it now, then we're probably not going to get it. In time, I should say.
That's right.
So, what options do we have? I understand the concerns about not dipping into the OPEB, and it seems like that would not give us much leverage anyway. It's only to the tune of 111,000 or 112,000 roughly, out of a 682,000 bill. That would only brings down to still $500,000 short. What other options do we have that are acceptable practice? Even if they're not, like, I guess, what would be the professional recommendation from, the business manager and then the superintendent, or some of the senior members of the board? How have we handled situations like this in the past? What's like 1, 2, or 3 options that we might have at play there?
Can I just say this, in the 10 years I've been here, this has never happened. This is an anomaly.
In all my years as a board member and as a business manager, which go back 24 years total now, I've never had to do this.
I
Go
do,
back to the board and ask for money.
I do believe the ARP-S are exiting, and some of these high escalated costs have definitely impacted, and some of those things that we were looking at the beginning of the year. But I'll let you talk about what we can do from here.
I'm going to tell you this much. My prior district, I retired from them in December. They are going through the very same thing you're going through here. Their budget was rejected because of, there's no more ESSER, there's no more ARP funding. So, and that's a much smaller district, so that has a much larger effect on their spending directly on their budget. Similarly here, you're losing that funding next year. It's gone. So, and what was it, $6-8 million total between ESSER and ARP funding? That's a big chunk of money. So now it's got to come out of your pocket, or you make other changes. Without going into a dissertation, my recommendation is to take the I'm going to call it round it, the 1.4 million, use it to offset the deficit. If the deficit is sufficed at the end of June and it's covered, roll the balance into your health savings reserve. So that would be my recommendation, but it's up to the
Quick,
board.
That would mean.
the 1.4 million figure you just put out there, could you just remind me where that's coming from?
That's coming from the impact aid mostly.
Okay, so it would
Take a
be,
look at your revenue estimate, the third column.
That's your
Revenue,
sheet with the
third
blue on
column.
top.
yep, understood, got it. That would be,
That would be option A for me, because you're not going to, if you're going to ask for that money, ask for enough to cover that and to rebuild your reserve.
okay. And that's the impact aid that goes to the town, and that we've had a few discussions about already, about how to possibly reclaim that or use it.
Yes, and it's just for this year. Ian, I think we had looked at it over time, and we're told from the town that you can't go retroactive. If you're going to ask for something, and it's excess above what was expected from the town, it doesn't impact the taxpayer, but that it needs to be asked for within that year. That you can't wait and then ask for something that's already happened, because it's too late.
Okay, so is that 1.4 in play with that as a parameter?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So,
Does the town already have this money? Did they put it in their budget? No, okay.
it's in the, as I understand it, it's in the reserve.
Oh, okay, good. As long as it's not in their budget.
No,
Okay, it's in the reserve. So our option
well-
is to go to the town.
I mean, we can ask. Again, the impact aid was budgeted at $4,094,300. The actual was $5,819,196. I want to make it clear,
909, right?
I want to make it clear that unlike special education excess cost reimbursement, which goes to the town and then is required to come to us, this can come to us through the budget, but is not required to come to us directly. All we can do is make the request. It's not an entitlement. We won't be going to the town, in my opinion, we're not going to go there with saying we're entitled to this money. But we can show how it will take care of the current year deficit and replenish the reserve. Keep in mind, we only know the health insurance account balance as of March.
Right.
We still have to get statements for April, May, and June, which we won't know until September or October.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's way behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ian, did I interrupt?
Well, no, I appreciate the summary and the, yeah, so basically like, whereas the sped excess costs we have a legal claim to,
Right.
the impact, we are asking the town to, to help us out,
Right.
That's right.
get out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And to make the insurance
Hold it.
reserve, more stable, which is in everybody's best interest.
Right.
Right, yeah, so it looks like, no, that, yeah, because, then that's what Ray was saying with the, so the 1.4 minus the 682 would leave us just under, $800,000 to funnel in, or, to put into the healthcare reserves.
Right.
That
All
would
right.
that would, don't forget, that would also help the town in a way, too. By moving it into the healthcare reserve, it would offset some of their
Yeah, it
structure.
would help all of us. 'Cause we're in this together.
You're hooked at the hip, so.
We are.
The only other problem is that we have to go back to the town and ask for money for the nurses. So,
Yeah, well,
No, they should have paid for the nurses.
well, they should have paid,
Well-
but they didn't pay.
well,
But,
that's
That's
not,
another.
yeah.
that's another thing, but you gotta
That's-
think about that, we gotta ask for this, and then we have to go back, probably, and ask for money for the nurses.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure, like, how we could seek that in a way that's,
I mean,
Do we have to put money in the health insurance fund? Is that something,
The reserve.
reserved, is that
So
something?
that when if your claims exceed a certain percentage, they start tapping the reserves to pay for the claims. And we've had a high claim ratio this past year. That happens about every 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, I heard you say that at the other meeting. Do you know how much money we have in the reserve now?
I haven't had a chance to get it.
Oh, okay.
Nobody knows.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Can I just say, going back to, or you wanted to?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Dave's original projection was that in February, our reserve was gone and we were starting to dip into the corridor. So I just want to distinguish, if we're going to put money back into the reserve, it's to help restore the corridor.
Right.
For
If that's
everybody.
actually the case, and then have some additional reserve, especially if we're looking at future plan changes, we need to have enough reserve
Right,
to be
that's
able
true.
to make that move.
Yeah, I misspoke when I
that's a
said
good
we need to
point.
replenish the reserve. To your point, we need to replenish the court.
That's right.
Yeah, good point, Lori. That's why we have you here.
That's
know.
why you're here.
It takes a village to run the school
Does take a
district.
village. I also say that, go on, Ian, I'm sorry. I was just going to add something about the nurses.
And we're going to, we'll have Ian and then Jen.
I was gonna go on that subject as well, sort of like, to follow up on Bev's, comment of like, yeah, we're kind of in a weird situation where, we're gonna go back to the town and ask for multiple things that, and what would be the best sequencing of that. At the same time, we're also looking at how we're restructuring, how we manage our money moving forward, and also how we conduct ourselves with the budget procedure. So I was just thinking of a way that we could present ourselves to the town with, one possibility would be maybe to do it as take a little bit of time, it's basically like try to hustle together a package presentation of like, well, we need this, but this is what we're doing to prevent future issues like this. Something like that. So that it's not like just, oh, help us. It's more like acknowledge the issues that got us in this jam, and then, identify how we're going to correct that moving forward, and say, just for the sake of stability, to get us out of, this unfortunate situation and give us a chance for a clean start, we need this and this.
We'll never come back and ask you again.
No, don't promise that.
Yeah, you never say never.
I know,
Well,
I know.
I think the 1.3 million for the nurses was, something that we were hopefully counting on. But I do know that the nurses don't have to be paid the insurance or their salary until they start working in September.
And that's a new development,
So,
relatively new development.
And
We
it-
originally thought we were taking over July 1st.
Right. And DOD, in the name of 515, we could put on hold for our nurses. So we could actually contribute to this and be good stewards, and maybe we'll have to see then at that point where we are with everything. And, I would say this is the most important thing we need to do right now, is this 1.3. It gets us through the end of the year, and we'll continue to be fastidious about and careful about what's going on. And it will also make our healthcare healthier and the corridor, and that's good for the whole town. And then by September, if I have that DOD, that can help cover those salaries, at least for the beginning of the year, and then we'll have to then see what else is needed. But that still is a savings to the town, because they've always paid that $1.348 million for those nurses, so.
So actually, instead of paying the 1.3 million for the nurses, give us the 1.3
$3
million.
million.
And we'll figure out the nurses.
I know, and this doesn't cost the taxpayer because it's excess
Oh,
revenue.
man. Yeah, money they didn't even expect, so.
I'd be fine with that sort of approach as well.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm going to recognize Jen, who's been waiting.
So, revenue estimate, right, 1.6. So if we take the 1.6, and then we have the nurses at 1.3, right? We'll say we'll cover the nurses, 1.3. If the town gives it to us, that gives us an extra 300,000. If our ESSER comes in, not our ESSER, DOD comes in, I think we're all covered. Does that make sense? 1.6 minus 1.3 is nurse, that gives us 300,000, which is the shortfall if DOD comes in.
I'm sorry, Jen,
Where'd
what
you
did
get
you
the
say?
1.6?
I
The
think let's be
1.6 is
careful.
the revenue estimate.
Yeah, I think we're
Does that
only
work?
talking about this year.
Oh.
We're not
Yeah,
talking
no,
about.
you can't
Oh,
can't
because
cross
that
years.
point-
Remember, that was
Oh,
what
yeah,
I was
yeah.
told. It could only
Yep.
be from this year.
So that 500.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good try.
Is there, no, I was just Yeah, I was just trying.
That's why we're all in this together,
So,
thinking it through.
Yeah. that's
Okay.
what she's doing. Any other thoughts?
nope. I'm just trying to like move.
Matthew?
So there's one more elephant in the room that we don't know about, and that's the HVAC. Sorry. There's the HVAC inspections that have to be done by January. Do you have any idea
That
when
would be next year. So that isn't,
that would come in next year's budget?
yeah, we're only
Okay.
talking about the
Terrific.
the shortfall for the current
Thank you.
year. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jay.
I'm sorry.
And there is money in the funds for that, for inspection.
I was thinking about if there were any findings.
Mike is right.
Mike, yeah.
Thank you.
Just give me a moment. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to
of course.
organize.
You had it. You had that. You had gotten
This one?
the- No. This is just extra copies.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. So you both mentioned,
Let me go look on our desk.
so it's mentioned that going back to the town for more money at the end of the year, can't remember it happening, or certainly hasn't happened in a long time. My interpretation is, past practice, would we just, like, for instance, the previous year, just have carried over this deficit to the next year? And that's why,
I don't think you can't do that.
well, but wasn't it done? I mean, I guess I'm hung up on this line, 626,000 of prior year expenses deferred to FY '24. So it was done in the prior year. I understand we can't do it forward,
It
but,
was- It's my understanding it was a payroll. It was split payroll. We're not doing that now.
They didn't encumber for bills received after July 1st. There were no encumbrances to draw on. So then we recharacterized it back to the previous fiscal year. So,
okay. So it is truly exceptional that we're in a 600,000 shortfall. And,
Yep.
and we're chalking that up to ARP ESSER falling away. I'm still hung up
I don't
on.
think so. No.
So
No, we have
what-
cut all
why?
ARP ESSER. I know we keep talking about ARP ESSER.
It's gone.
That's gone.
Okay.
It all comes down to the property damages that we've incurred, the transportation cost, the increase in that contract, the utilities going up, some of the legal fees, and also the intrusion into the computer system,
Yes, the cyber attack.
cyber attack.
But it is throughout, I mean, if you look at the other spreadsheet, it's throughout our budget functions, our budget categories. So it's not, I mean, I see these bullet points, but,
Well, and there's
so how did
also-
every other year, I mean, was this a perfect storm year? Or did every other year just work out?
I
I'm
would
trying to
say-
wrap my head around why this is the one year we're like this, if no one can remember having this problem before. Because we have to be answered to the town council.
I wasn't here for the whole thing, but I can tell you this much. When you take a $725,000 reduction against your health care, and then you have catastrophic claims, it's a two-fisted punch in the nose. I mean, you took a left, right to the jaw on that thing. I mean, for lack of a better analogy,
For healthcare.
for healthcare alone.
But that
Some of the
doesn't show up in-
healthcare-
That shows up as a zero in this one, in the shortfall. The health insurance, number 9, health insurance benefits, it's all good there. So it doesn't, like, in terms of adding up to the 1.2 million that ends up, we subtract off to get the 6, that health insurance issue is not in here.
It's good because you're sitting, we haven't touched the payment yet on that for this month.
Yeah, this can't go negative. It goes into the reserve in the corridor when it goes negative. But
But-
it is imputed in these substitute costs, that if you have people out with major medical issues, then your
That's what.
your substitute costs are going to go up.
But the
And that's
subs-
part of it.
But substitute costs was explained, actually, it's a net positive in terms of the budget, because the teachers that aren't there, or that was reflected as more money than expected remaining, and then the substitute cost was less, but not as much. So it's like 600,000 above for the teachers, that was number 2, and the substitute was 400,000 less.
Some of the
So-
some of the teacher surplus was also just not filling the positions.
Yeah, of
So
course.
in other words, there's a lot of strands that don't, that we can't separate out in this document.
Yeah, it-
It's reaching this bottom line.
Well, it just seems throughout the budget, but healthcare in this spreadsheet doesn't show up as a liability that we are asking for, the town council. Because that's line 9, and it's the only where it shows up, and it's 0 in terms of remaining balance.
That's because we're attempting to, the reserve and the corridor don't show up on this budget document.
So I thought,
And so when there's an overage in that account, it goes into the reserve and the corridor.
Yep.
It's off of this sheet.
I fully understand
We're
that.
trying to build that back up.
Well, I fully understand that, but, so, then you get to the other sheet, the drawdowns, or the bottom line in this one, 1.2 million. We've got the drawdowns, which is suggested adjustments of 560,000. That's where we're left with the 682. The healthcare part is not involved in those numbers at all.
No.
At this point, no.
And so that healthcare reasoning to say why we're, I guess, when you get to that 680K over, to get to like a 0.75% above our FY '24 budget, that's not in that. There are other reasons for that. And it's spread throughout the budget, but it's not healthcare that we're going back and asking for.
You're not seeing it there because it's held in a reserve with the town.
I know,
Okay.
but,
What I'm asking for is to rebuild that reserve and that stop loss.
where does that show up?
It doesn't.
Okay, so I'm dealing with the handouts, and I'm saying that the 680,000 that presumably we're asking the town
I
for.
made a recommendation, and it's just a recommendation. You
Right.
can knock it, you can change it, you can do whatever you want. It's my recommendation as a professional. I mean, if I didn't explain it properly, I apologize.
No, I think you explained it quite well. My question is, if this is the first time this has happened in people's memory, why are we off budget? And hearing about healthcare doesn't jibe with the numbers that are shown.
because
So-
it's the reserve, right?
Yeah,
Right,
so
yeah.
so what's,
It's not part of your budget.
so please,
It's not part of the budget.
yes, please give me a reason why we're at 680 over and asking for the town that doesn't involve healthcare, because that's not what's in this spreadsheet.
It's
So
really,
why?
it's
Go ahead.
1.2 from this remaining balance.
Yeah.
We're under, see, 1.2
Yeah.
million, right? And
Right.
so when they went to this page here, they drew it down, they did some cuts. let's say,
Exactly.
And they got to 681,000, okay?
Yes,
So that's how much we really need, I'm taking, we really need the 681,000.
That's correct.
But we're short in the reserve, right?
well, the reserve's separate.
Yeah, but we're short in the reserve, so
Yeah.
that's separate. So we could just go to the town council and ask for the 681,000, and so be it, that's it.
And
right?
I'm asking, why are we off budget by that 680,000 if it's never happened
So we had
before?
property damage at almost $500,000,
Right.
and we're starting to get paid back from that, but that influences this budget. We have utility costs that were $250,000 that we unforeseen,
That's
all these
okay.
heightened expenses. Everything in supplies was going up, but we did hold back on those site budgets the best we could. So we tried to influence it with less spending than what we thought we needed, we held back, so that wouldn't happen. So almost every category has been influenced either by inflation, property damages, the perfect
Contracts.
storm, floods.
Yep.
We could blame it on, the climate change, a little bit, but, it just, every single area you can imagine has been impacted, and even the subs, and the subs sometimes related to healthcare, but also for other reasons too.
Right. So I'm going to recognize Ian, then Jen, then I believe Matthew, and then Dean.
Thank you, Jay. Just to follow up on Mike's comments, I guess maybe if I was going to paraphrase, I kind of share the concern that he's expressing, or at least the way I understand it. Because if we're going to go to the town and we're going to ask for this money, and what are we going to present to them that shows them how we got to this spot and, why it was unprecedented? So, I mean, if we are going to try to incorporate the healthcare situation into that, then we would need to have a document that also expresses that and shows how our having to put into that and support that diminish our ability to handle the overages that exist in the spreadsheets we're looking at tonight.
I agree. We should bring that presentation that showed, we did receive that shows how much we are in the corridor. So we should bring that to the town council so they can understand.
Right, so if we're going to try to connect healthcare as part of the root causes here, then we need to demonstrate that with the evidence. That's essentially what I wanted to say. But also I'm just looking, again, back to the spreadsheet that we are looking at tonight, in the summary review spreadsheet. I mean, I understand the healthcare doesn't appear here. And so the healthcare kind of exists in its own little pocket universe where there's the reserve and then there's the corridor. And we know that the alarm bells have been ringing there and that we've dipped into the corridor and that, we're sort of in a danger zone there. We have to rebuild that. Now we need to demonstrate that. But also, outside of the healthcare situation, we have all these other overages that do permeate this spreadsheet. And even just taking salaries out of it, if you don't even look, salaries alone, that's 630,000. But even if we leave that out of it, we have 126,000, in the benefits. So again, okay, that attach that to salary, so set that aside. Then we have 285,000 in the purchase services. We have 115,000 in property services, 100,000 in transportation. I'm sorry, no, 100,000 over in that one. And then, 250,000 under in supplies. So, the 250 plus 280 plus 126 plus 115, that pretty much gets us there, to that 682 figure. That's very close. So, I don't know, there's a lot we have to make sure that we have our argument our presentation well crafted.
Right.
We have our request, and then we're going to have to explain how this happened. And, I do appreciate Ray and Susan saying that, in their experience, they have not seen something like this before. So all the more reason I think it's imperative upon us that, we have to demonstrate that this is sort of a 100-year storm, so to speak. And that we are taking, great measures moving forward to make sure that we are better prepared and in a more resilient situation to deal with any other, in the coming years. And that, again, the pitch would be that the 1.4 would help us, get there. That's the thing we need but we do have to kind of, show all the evidence of one thing led to another, to another, to another, and the healthcare situation is related to this because there was money that had to be funneled in that direction, or was not available for us to siphon off, to help, cover these overages. I guess maybe that's also the thing. Like in the past, if I understand correctly, in the past, again, another past practice that we probably should not continue is the use of the healthcare reserves and, to balance concerns within the budget. If we're setting aside money for healthcare, it should be for that, and we should leave it alone.
Just,
You never want to balance the budget on the backs of your employees.
right. However, the town did have a policy that the reserve, you had to use 80% of your reserves, and so we followed their policy on that for many years. And it worked well when the reserve
When it was
was
healthy.
creating a surplus.
All right, so
So-
that ties back into like I guess my point about, let's make sure that we create a cohesive narrative. And if that's part of the sequence of events that led to this, then we also need to include that, with the evidence of that policy and how much, that happened over the years, right? So, if past boards and past, administration acted in line with that policy and that expectation, and then, due to the spike in claims that occurred in this past year, it caught us, caught the current budget year unprepared to handle, the crisis, then, two things. One, we need to demonstrate that clearly with evidence. And two, moving forward, we may need to look at that policy. Maybe that 80% spend down is not a good policy.
Okay.
Did you have something, right?
I was going to reiterate something. That was my Plan A. Plan B, which you're legally entitled to, is all $945,000 of the excess cost. But the reason I didn't pick that as my Plan A, it has a direct effect on the revenue for the town, because they probably already accounted for that. So that's the drawback. You're entitled to it, but then again, they've probably already,
Yeah.
that's part of their revenue.
So I'm going to recognize Jen, and then I believe it was Matthew, and then I believe it was Dean.
So, in my mind, Mike, and this is just my opinion.
Can you speak up a little?
Oh, yeah. In my mind, and this is just my opinion, and we talked about this entire thing. If I were to attribute to something, the non-certified aides, no one's ever accounted for that. I don't know if that's in excess of the ARP ESSER that bled into our budget. And also the electricity, because it's just higher electricity in general. And I don't know if you heard that sometimes we have to run the air conditioning and the heat at the same time. And I don't know if that's like part of it. And the other item I would attribute to is they forgot to budget the telephone. And that's why you're seeing 150 there. That's me, and this is just my opinion, not anyone else's.
Well, I think that it was out of the DOD
It was out
supplemental.
of DOD, we didn't forget. It
Yeah,
just
we didn't
was used for
forget it. It
grant,
was
and then
just-
we moved it into.
Yeah,
Okay,
we've
because-
discussed that with Clint about how that was moved from DOD supplemental to the operating budget.
Okay,
So it's not that it wasn't there on the operating budget, because it was in the DOD supplemental.
so then it still goes back to the electricity, heater, air conditioning.
Well, that would cause the oil to go up.
Yeah, but like the whole thing is like 437. So I'm just saying that like that's where I think some of it is. And then because like I know you talk about all of like the insurance claims, but it looks like we're getting some of that back. So I wouldn't necessarily say that that was like the main cause. But I would like to understand the non-certified aides. Is that in excess of ARP ESSER that bled in to our budget? Because we already discussed the substitute and the clerical, and it's an offset to the teachers, basically what was stated earlier. So I would like to hear about that.
I think line 3 you're talking about? I don't have the detail on it, I mean, at this point. When I pulled this together, it's an aggregate,
Okay.
as you
We can look for that, though.
but I can find the detail.
It's definitely paraprofessional costs, paraeducator costs, so it's probably a combination of some of the contractual increases, because I think they did come in a little higher than what we had anticipated. And then based on special ed need, we predict a certain number, but if more students turn up with more needs, we still have to staff that, even if it's not within our budget. So Jen, I believe it's the combination of those two issues.
Yep.
Yeah.
But with special ed needs, right, like we would get reimbursed one for those children, right? No?
Yeah.
Not
No.
necessarily.
Okay.
And some of them are covered in an IDEA grant, but it's not enough to cover all of them.
Okay.
Matthew?
So earlier in the evening, Mike asked some questions about substitutes and teachers. And an idea occurred to me then, which has been reinforced very well by Ian. So I'm not sure it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago when we were submitted our budget, we made a decision as the board at that time that the budget numbers needed to be supplemented by narrative. And I think that that's what Ian is getting at. And, maybe it is possible, maybe it's not possible, that at the bottom of whatever your final sheet, after you've adjusted it, there's a way to put in a different color ink or with a yellow line, something to indicate the impact of the healthcare budget with an asterisk that would be explained with a narrative. To me, it's a communication problem as much as a fiscal problem. And I think that maybe my way is not the best way, but I think that
I'm used to seeing that. That's not a big issue.
I think that would be very helpful for the
We can
town
accommodate that.
council to see that item somewhere on here. You figure that out.
I always supplied a narrative. I mean, this district, obviously, I followed normal protocol. But that's not a big issue. We can put a narrative together.
Thank you very much.
Good idea.
Dean?
I know exactly where Brother Whitney is coming from. You just have this 1.2, before you ameliorate, that's the hole. So we're looking at the four corners, and the four corners don't say anything about healthcare. All right, so there's a general rule of thumb. If you're making an argument to a court, especially an appellate court, lawyers have all kinds of points they want to make. You've only got so much time at the mic. Find your three strongest points, make those. So, what's that?
Make your three strongest.
I don't have my three strong, I'm just saying, I'm framing it. Pick the three biggest drivers of the 1.2 million. I don't mean individual line items, I mean things like special ed costs, X dollars. It could be a combination of lines. Utilities, X dollars, et cetera, that's the bulk of it. Because if you go through a line by line and say, well, we did okay over here and we didn't do so okay, their eyes are gonna glaze over. You pick your three, you come in, you go, that's why this is a
Yep,
bad year.
I like that.
Call it a perfect storm, whatever you want.
Yep.
And then, yeah, we are gonna have to explain how that's never gonna happen again. Or it's
We hope it
unlikely,
doesn't.
You don't want it to ever happen.
or we don't wanna be here again, or whatever. Because it won't be enough to say, well, this has never happened before.
Yeah.
Well then, as a side note, I want to say that the reason why we have a healthcare reserve is to use it in case, break glass. Right. You just don't want to trend into it. That's my concern. And I don't know whether we're trending into it or whether we're going to pull out. So, yeah, the flag's up, but I'm not ready to, break the glass, I guess, pull the fire alarm on it. But that is what the reserve is there for, in case of emergency. So I'm not worried about 1 year of that. I am worried about subsequents. Thank you.
And I think the point is that you want to make it healthy again, especially if we can find a better, more cost-efficient way to ensure. And you have to be healthy for that in order to switch programs.
If we switch.
Bev?
Not me, you.
Oh, I thought you were looking to me to say something. Any other comments, questions?
I just have one thing to say,
Don't,
just one short thing, and then,
Don't say that.
trust me.
follow us up.
I heard all the argument about, evidence and that sort of thing, but you tell me where the trip to Bermuda is in this budget. If you can't follow what we heard tonight, I don't know what other evidence there is. So that's all I have to say.
thought we budgeted for a trip to Bermuda.
No travel was allowed this year.
No travel.
It's under transportation.
Except $100 for master class.
Transportation staff.
All right, so are we at a point where we want to entertain a motion?
I don't care if you want to entertain it or not. Motion to adjourn.
No, not that motion.
When we have a motion
Wrong
before that
motion.
motion.
We still have like business manager and, yeah, no.
I make a motion to approve that the Board of Education formally requests a special appropriation from the town of Groton, which is in line with the excess revenue collected by the town of Groton on behalf of the Board of Education in FY '24 in the amount of $1,399,824.
Do I hear a second?
Thomas.
Third.
Well, we had 3 people. We'll figure that out.
May I propose a friendly amendment? With excess revenue of funds appropriated for the use of the education of the children of Groton collected by the town. Because from my perspective, the money that came to us was an intended use that
I'll second it for discussion.
I think articulating that that money came to us with an intended use on the part of the people who gave it to us, it would behoove us to mention that.
But you're putting the word in education?
I'll let somebody else modify my language, but the intent is to say that with the excess revenue collected that had been appropriated for the education of the children of Groton, or other language that you would prefer, to that effect.
But all this doesn't have to do with education, does it, like transportation? Well,
See,
you
it's
wanna-
all- everything we do is for the education of our kids. If we don't feed them,
Why
they
don't
don't
we
get
just say for
educated.
the children,
Or education related,
education?
excess educated related.
However you want to phrase it.
My concern about that is that it's seen as a well-worn tactic by folks outside of education. Oh, they're going to use the word children like a human shield. We all know what the schools are for. We all know they're full of kids, otherwise we wouldn't have the blessed things. So when you explicitly put children in there, people are they might feel a little insulted. Oh, you're trying to tug on my heartstrings because you put the word children in there. I know what the bloody schools are for. You have to put children in there. So I'm afraid that putting children in there might actually have the opposite effect.
What do you think about education? That's appropriate, it's appropriate.
We are the
for
Board of Education, this is the Education Department. I'm just saying, if you add in the word.
We have the Board of Ed.
Yeah, we have the Board of
It says
Ed
Board
in
of
there.
Education. I'm just, again, this is kind of a tactical.
Whatever you guys decide.
Tactical matter. That's just my 2 cents. It's not, that's just me.
I'm fine with the first motion myself.
I was just wondering what the number was. I didn't catch it.
$1,399,824.
And that came from,
That came from
The chart.
the
The
chart.
bottom.
Middle of the bottom of
Yeah, where's that chart?
this one? Oh, going forever.
Too many
All
pages.
right, I'm going to recognize Ian, and then I'm going to recognize Jen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I can appreciate Matt's concerns and interests, but I think the original motion is probably the simplest way to say it. And so I'm in favor of just the original motion as stated by Bev.
Jen?
Bev, did you select the 1.39 or 1.4 because it's known and not the 1.6 at the end? I'm just trying to understand why you selected the 1.4 and not the 1.6.
Do you see the check up there? I had explained it in the beginning. There are 2 charges here for
Yep.
special education, and we've been working with the town, and they've been forwarding those over to us.
Okay.
So that's
Yes.
the expectation, so we deducted
It's
that
already
193
part-
from the 1.5 million.
it.
Yeah.
And that's how we got that 1.3 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Bev, did you want to withdraw your second on the motion?
I'll withdraw my motion.
I withdraw my second.
You withdraw your second? Okay. So the motion on the table, are there any other questions or,
I was just wondering if we want to, or if it would be a good idea to put in what we're going to use it for. I don't know if it is. I'm just asking that question.
Good question.
well, it's a special appropriation, and then we will be presenting the backup for why we need that.
And our rationale is to cover the rest of FY '24 and then put some in.
To help refund the
Restore. Restore, corridor, and
Well, we could,
reserve.
I'll put that in the motion.
So you
Can I amend my motion?
move to amend.
I move to amend. Well, go ahead, Mike.
I'll second, but I don't know the wording exactly, so let's get that right.
Well, to offset, what do you want to say,
So
Susan?
start it just like you had it, and then
Okay.
you can say, after you've said the whole thing, to offset FY '24 to,
The deficit.
Deficit, and
move
to,
forward with the balance to go to the reserve to help bolster the medical.
And restore the
Restore.
healthcare corridor. Well,
And
to
reserve.
help restore.
Right.
And we've got FY '24 deficit. Should we have something like remaining expenses or something like
Remaining
that,
expenses.
rather than deficit?
remaining expenses.
Defray.
did you write that all down, Michael?
Yeah. I didn't get the other one, the other part.
I like defray remaining expenses as opposed to deficit.
It's all about words.
What did you write?
I only got the first part. I got to offset FY '24 remaining expenses and restore,
Help restore.
Healthcare corridor.
Help restore.
Help restore.
to help restore
The corridor and
Healthcare.
health reserve.
corridor,
And health
And reserve.
And reserve.
corridor. Did that flawlessly. That's my amendment. Or it's your amendment, because I seconded it.
Yeah. Half and half, half and half.
Well phrased, Bev.
Lori and everybody else contributed to it. It's our amendment.
So
Okay.
we'll take a vote on the amendment.
Okay.
So all in favor of the amendment to the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so now the motion is to approve the motion as amended.
Right.
Does someone want to read that again in totality for the record?
I didn't write it down.
We'll see.
How about Mike?
Go with you.
So this
No
is,
pressure,
this is,
Professor.
this is what I scribbled. I usually have other people write. To approve that the Board of Education formally requests a special appropriation from the town of Groton, which is in line with the excess revenue collected by the town of Groton on behalf of the Board of Education in FY '24 in the amount of $1,399,824 to offset FY '24 remaining expenses and help restore healthcare corridor and reservoir. Reserve.
Reserve.
I'm so close.
That-
Reserve.
Oh, we dipped already.
All right.
So the
Good job,
vote,
Mike.
the vote is on the motion as amended. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Did Ian vote? Is he still on?
He's still there.
What was your vote, Ian?
Sorry, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And now,
So that
when do you
passes.
plan to do all this?
So that's the next question.
Yep.
So this will be forwarded to the town manager.
It'll be a letter?
I think it'll have to be an email,
Okay.
because they're going to create the agendas. my understanding is that this would have to be taken up next Tuesday, and then by the RTM on Wednesday.
Okay.
Can we just quickly get an update on the searches for business manager and assistant superintendent?
Sure, I'll keep it brief because I know everybody's probably ready to go at this point. So as far as the business manager, we had posted and had been recruiting. The posting had just closed earlier this week. So we're in the process of reviewing those candidates. We'll be scheduling interviews soon. In relation to the assistant superintendent, we have just posted that position. We'll be recruiting for the next several weeks. It is scheduled to close on July 14th. We typically leave that job open quite a bit longer so we can cast the net as wide as possible. So we would anticipate interviewing once we have finished recruiting, so after July 14th, in hopes that we can select someone during August and have someone ready to go for start of the school year, right, Susan? Am I correct on the timing?
Yeah, I'd like it,
Yeah.
like even
Even
before that, a
before,
couple
yeah.
weeks before, but.
Yeah.
And we're going to have board members on both of the interview committees,
Thank you.
Okay, okay.
please.
How many board members?
I'm trying to think what
Well, we, in the
typically did.
past, we've had maybe a board member in some of the interviews, and then the chair has typically been with me in the final, or a vice chair, so that's what we have done in the past, that, for this level position.
Okay.
Jen and then Mike.
Quick question, Lori, how many
Ian.
applicants did we get for the one that is closed?
So we had a total of, I think we've recruited twice on it. I think we had a complete total of maybe 3 candidates.
Yeah, we reposted it,
And recruited again.
but we feel like we have a couple viable.
Oh,
I think.
my question is just informational. For assistant superintendent search, what's the typical composition of that interview committee? Is there specifically teacher representation,
Yes.
paraprofessional, staff?
We don't-
Yeah, we would compile a pretty diverse committee, so administrators, teachers, non-certified staff. We would kind of bring all of those individuals together and make sure we have a diverse representation for that. Yeah.
Ian and then Matthew. And then Adrian.
Thank you. All right, so I lost the connection there a little bit. So the business manager position has been posted a couple of times and has received 3 applicants, and now that posting is closed?
Yes.
But we're still, okay, and we're in the process of posting for the assistant superintendent at this time.
You got it.
Is that-
Yep.
All right, and we expect to close that around July 14th, or that's when the interviews will occur?
It closes on July 14th, Ian.
Understood, okay, very well. And to circle back to Jay's comment, I definitely appreciate the idea of having board members as part of the interview process for both positions. And I think, having at least 2 or possibly 3 would be good, just to have sort of a diverse array of perspectives of the board, not just, I would not be in favor of just one single board member being part. Thank you.
Matthew.
I was
I
wondering,
wouldn't
Lori,
mind this
are
one.
we taking advantage of CABE? We're putting an ad in there, public, terrific.
Yeah, we network, for these level positions, we network with all those organizations, CASPA, CASBO, CABE. So we've been, Learn, the rest, we've kind of blanketed it all over.
Thank you for
We also include, for instance, the finance department, the business department, especially for, the hire of their supervisor.
Right.
So we include as many people that are affected by the person in the position.
Adrian.
I just have a question about the assistant superintendent position. Will anybody be filling that position temporarily, either from another role in the district or an outside person? And are we going to be, so what I'm really wondering is if if the board is going to be spending any money towards that salary position while we're going through this process.
I don't feel the need for it. There's not a lot of curriculum work being done this summer. It's a pretty light summer, except for some camps and things, and I really feel that we can manage it, and I can handle it. You know, I can go to those meetings in between and, you know, certainly sit in. That's the role I used to play, so, for a long time. So I'm happy to do that, and there's some efficiencies to that. Depending on our findings, like if we were finding that we don't find good candidates and it's going to extend itself, then I'll probably say, yeah, let's get someone interim. But as far as I can see, if we're able to start those interviews and, you know, kind of complete the process end of July and get someone in here in August, I think we'll be fine.
All right, so just to be clear, so there won't be any stipends being paid to anybody else in the district while we're,
I don't see that they will need that.
or at least you'll come back to us
I'd
and
come
talk
back to you
about
if I
that.
needed that.
All right.
Mike?
I just had one further thought. Hiring practices I've been involved in, sometimes there's a sort of a tiered system where there would be a search committee or an interview committee who would meet with the candidate and interview them at length. And then there's a broader part of the interview process, say a presentation or a meeting with different groups, which are more people who can submit their input then to the interview committee or search committee, but wouldn't be privy to the entire process or have to be at that entire process. And that might be a tool you want to explore. That's a way to increase overall interaction. And actually, it often helps attract the potential candidates to the job too, by the way.
That's typically how we
That's
do it,
Lori
Mike.
shaking
That's a
her head.
really good way
Yeah.
to do it. Performance Task 2 also shows you their kind of work in action. So we have done that in the past, and that's what I'm saying, that to have multiple board members, but they would be maybe involved in different parts of the process, including the final process.
Yeah, I could say the entire board could maybe be part of that process. Yeah.
I don't think the entire board could do it.
Just part, like, for instance, a presentation or a performance task, something like that. That's up to you. It's not, I'm just suggesting that is a model that can work.
We'll see who's interested in, you know, participating. And there's 2 different positions, too, that we have to fill, you know, seats to,
I was thinking of the assistant superintendent
okay.
position.
I know there's some people who might be interested also in the business manager.
Ian?
Jen?
Jen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I liked Mike's idea there too of like having like different tiers of involvement, and that could be a way, like having some aspect of where, you know, anyone that's on the board that wants to, you know, be involved in reviewing the information or helping formulate questions or, you know, observing a performance task. Like, I think it would be great to have, you know, a lot of board buy-in on the hires. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And now, motion to adjourn.
No, oh, sorry. Sorry. You guys can all reject me, but, and maybe not this time, maybe next time, but I was hoping to suspend the rules because I wanted to discuss like what happened with the situation with Ernie. And that needs to be discussed, and I was sort of hoping to be able to do that tonight. But if we can't, I want it to at least be on the agenda for next time.
And I did try to clearly lay out what had occurred,
Okay,
as much as I knew,
okay,
to you in an email.
yep.
And I know you talked to Ernie again today, and it seems like it's been totally resolved.
I think
Okay.
James Spear was talking about for the public to hear because he did speak out in public comments about it, so.
I'll second that
Yeah.
for discussion.
Well, we can't add an agenda item, but I think it is fair to say that this is part of the fiscal year '24.
It was an idea that was on a spreadsheet as a way to get through the 24, and it was looking at the different enterprise funds, and I think I wrote this in my narrative, to look at the usage at Mary Morrison, which included custodial cost, and Ernie runs a kitchen, and there are other, you know, there's a treehouse program in there, there's because there's Ernie's Food Service, and then we also have an ECAT program. So the original idea that was formulated was that we would split it 3 ways, and the cost would be incurred. Somehow it got on the spreadsheet, and it got operated on, in between business managers, and, but it's been resolved. It was, as soon as we found out, it was instantly reversed. Lori, you had talked to the state, so if you want to say what you found out at the state, and that's why part of it was I was not recommending this even going forward, but it could not be done retroactive. But if you want to pick up on, it
Yeah.
is, you are able to do it, but.
Yeah, and Ray, feel free. Ray and I were on the call together, so we had a nice conversation with the state. They said it is something that is appropriate to be done. However, you do have to, there is some method to the calculation that has to be done, and certainly if we wanted to do it, you'd want to do it on a go-forward basis, not retroactively. So they've
And the board has
clarified.
to have a policy too.
And the board does have to have a policy
Yep.
that it does want to do this. So really, at this point, we've removed these items from conversation for the current FY '24 budget, because it wouldn't apply, and the board would have to decide if that's something it even wanted to consider in the future.
Thank you for that, but I guess my concern is it made it to a list, it was executed, but I want to understand, like, why there was no communication directly to the individual. That's part of it, right? And was communicated and relayed to the staff, which I feel is sort of like inappropriate.
So it was supposed to be communicated, and I think that Sam had given Ernie a heads up that there could be some costs related to utility costs at Mary Morrison. But you're right, it got acted on prematurely. And-
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to raise a point of order. This is not on the agenda. This is a special meeting.
Okay.
So I'm glad for the information, but I don't think it's appropriate to have any further discussion, especially among board members.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry.
The reason that I allowed this to go this far is that it was on that sheet of drawdowns that was created at a prior time, and so it was sort of related to the current year.
It wasn't.
And it was a way to.
It wasn't attached to the exhibits for this meeting.
Right.
It's a document from another time.
But it is related to the deficit and a way to reduce the deficit in the current year. So that's why I did allow it, but at this point, I think
It's fine.
your point
Beverly,
is
for
well
the third
taken.
time.
Yep.
Help me out. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
If there's no objection, we're
There's
adjourned.
your, oh, sorry.